All right, I'd like to call this meeting of the Town Council Budget Review to order. If you would please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. This is a budget review meeting, so it doesn't go by our standard agenda, but the first thing we have listed is a public comment. So if anybody wants to address the council tonight on the agenda items that we plan to cover, now would be a good time to come up. Seeing a lot of public in the audience, we'll say we're done with that one and move on to welfare.
Yes, sir.
Yes, welfare number 25 in your budget.
So Pat's here tonight to discuss the welfare budget. It's pretty much a flatline budget overall. It went up $196. However, social and health services went up about $1,700. And Pat could talk more about that increase, but everything else, taking out the 53rd week of payroll and everything else has been basically level funded. I've asked Pat several times about the rental and our because we pay sometimes for rents of individuals, and Pat keeps telling me we're good, and she keeps saying I'll let you know. So she'll let me know if we're not, but I've asked her to look at that too with all the new rental apartments that we have coming in, and she could talk a little bit about that. Take it away, Pat.
Pat,
Okay.
welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. So I am here to present the welfare budget. And just for general information for the general public, general assistance budget within the municipalities is a mandated function within the state. So we do have to provide an estimate of what we think people might need in basic needs like housing, electric, heat, food, prescriptions, and these kind of things are what we have to estimate and hope we have a good budget that will actually be able to predict what we need to spend. However, if we don't do a good budget, then what happens is we have to overexpend if the assistance is needed. So this is something that's always a balancing act when we're actually trying to figure out how to do a budget for welfare. But as far as for the general assistance portion of the budget for this year,
Pat?
Oh, do you want me to do?
No, I just want to amplify what you were saying. If
Okay.
we don't budget enough in welfare, we are required by state law to pay certain things, and we would have to come up with the money if we over budgeted. Or if
Correct.
we ran over our budget, we'd have to come up with that money from somewhere else, because those are state mandated requirements.
Exactly.
Or many of them are.
Yes, we are not allowed to, under state law, go reach our budget and say to people, "Oh,
Sorry, we're out."
sorry, we're out of money."
Yeah,
Right.
okay. I just wanted
So
to
it is
reiterate.
a balancing thing, and we have a couple of times gone over, but not in a lot of years, but a couple years we've actually gone over quite a bit on housing. And so that's sometimes a gamble, and that's why I guess he wanted me to take a look at the housing line item. I was actually more worried about the heating elements, because heating costs have gone up. Fuel assistance when it first started was not at a high level, but they just threw in an extra grants toward it. But still, the cost of heating is gone up. So I did increase those line items a little bit. Actually, as far as spending, even I know with all the rentals, because the rentals that have come into the community are really high-end rentals, it seems like I'm not being affected by them at all. But what I'm seeing more is, because we're not having affordable housing, we're seeing a lot of people who are housed in hotels because they can't find affordable housing. And so the increase in homelessness has increased dramatically. I spend a lot of times doing a lot of case management, finding shelters for people, and because there's just no way to find affordable housing. So that seems to be my biggest problem that's occurred for the last couple of years. is this increased amount of people who are having to stay in hotels because they can't find affordable housing, or we can't find them shelter. So that seems to be our biggest problem. As far as the COVID factor, actually, that's actually been less of an effect in the past year anyways, because of the assistance programs through the federal government. A lot of people have been getting help through those programs. And also the child tax credit has been amazing help to families with kids. So because of that, I think that we've seen a lot of rental requests come down for that reason, because people are using those toward things like basic necessities. The other factors in the social and health donation account area, that's the area that had the largest increase for this year. Right here is all the proposals for all the 14 agencies that requested assistance. So we had a total of 110,772,000 in requests. I part it down to 78,568. And what I'm mostly looking at when I'm looking at these proposals is what are they offering? What do they offer our residents? And I try, and are they providing something like a basic necessity that would be offsetting things that I would need to provide, or other things that I wouldn't be able to provide, like transportation for the elderly, or things like health for pregnant women, or things of that nature for the or homeless health and things like that. There's a lot of different things that these agencies do. So I spend a lot of time looking at these, and I increased it a little bit because 4 agencies asked for more. You know, a lot of times, obviously, they're asking for a lot more, and I have to actually kind of measure it out a little bit here and there as I see that it meets.
Now, Pat used the word donation. Technically,
Yeah.
that is the right word. However, they're providing a service to the town of Merrimack. So it's not a donation in that sense. We go through this, Pat goes through this, I should say, not we, but Pat goes through this. And she asked, how many Merrimack residents did you service? What was this? What was that? And that's how she bases the contributions that we pay to some of these agencies. So it's technically, yeah, a donation to this agency. However, they're providing residents of Merrimack a service, or we're sending Merrimack a residents to them to get this service.
And a lot of times they're going to be saving us money too, because we do support like shelters, and if we didn't have these shelters, then we would be housing people in hotels forever. So these are things that do assist us to be able to do case management for people to go to a next level of assistance. The next Transitional Housing is another one that is a program, and also there's other funding for helping people get out of homelessness and things like that. So these are programs that also can save us money.
Okay. Is that, do you
Yeah,
have anything else to
and
add?
that's,
or-
yeah,
okay.
that's about it. That's my little spiel, yes.
Are there any questions for Pat? Barbara?
Yeah, I know this isn't going to be popular, but I'm going to say it anyways. The only 2 under the social and health services, which is $83.99, is the American Red Cross and the Big Brothers and Big Sisters. And I know they asked for the money, and I think in the past we've given them actually more. But, you know, out of all this list, those 2 have machines to get donations. They're national, they're international in some respects, and like they have whole departments that all they do is fundraising. And they know if they go out in New Hampshire, they can probably pick up a few $1,000s for each town in the area, versus the rest of the list, which are all local and don't have the donation machine behind them to get those kinds of things. So that's my only two, problem with the list is those two. I know that they probably give some services. Red Cross is always, they're in and out of different things. Big Brothers, Big Sisters. If you go to their website, you'd be surprised who they've got on their board to help with donations. I would rather see, it's only $2,000, but I almost would rather see it go to, our soup kitchens, the VA, which is also doing hospice here in town. Anyway, that's just my thought. Thank you.
Would you like me to respond to that a little bit?
I would love it.
Well, if you notice, that's why they're only getting $1,000 each, so, but the one thing with the Red Cross is they do provide assistance with people who have fires. So, and that could be very costly when someone is homeless, especially if it's a large, building with several apartments. But they do provide, that immediate and assistance. So that is one of the factors and why Red Cross is a good one. Big Brothers and Big Sisters, it is what I call a tertiary type agency because it doesn't give the basic needs, but they do come back and request, and that's why it has the lowest donation or lowest amount of money that we pay to it.
Okay, any other questions, comments, thoughts?
So before Pat goes,
Please.
I just want to thank a lot of agencies that help Pat out. The Lioness Club around Christmas time, Friends and Family. I'm going to miss some, Pat. The coat, Easter.
The Rotary Club.
The Rotary
Club. We get donations to actually Parks and Rec for scholarships. So there's a lot of.
But there are a lot of agencies that are in this town that also help out with a lot of different things, especially when this year, hopefully, they won't bring the Easter baskets when it's a windstorm.
Yes.
Because I'm not chasing them down Route 3 anymore.
Yeah, that's always an
So-
interesting story. I'm saving that for when Paul retires. I'm coming back just to give that story of how we were trying to bring in the Easter baskets and this big windstorm happened and the baskets just went everywhere. Down the street, across the street, all the way down to the river. Yes, we chased them.
But no, I do want to thank those organizations. I know I left a couple of them out, but we do appreciate all their support that they do give to Pat, and there's a lot of things that Pat does on top of just basic welfare needs of the community, but helps out with the coats, with the book, in Friends and Family, the backpacks, the Easter baskets. There's just numerous things that people do help out with as well.
Yeah, and actually, the one thing, just a shout out too to all the things that we do have in Merrimack that makes us such a wonderful community. Our food pantries is one thing that we have. We have a clothing art, that we have. So there's different things that, like the Lions Club provides help with glasses, So these are all things that I have to keep in mind when I'm looking for help. Because, that's the thing, it's not just paying out what we pay in assistance. If someone needs glasses and they have a choice between paying for their rent and glasses, this can make a big difference for someone on a limited budget.
So, just one question though, on housing, 8481. It's budgeted for 35,000 this year, and it spent 21,000 the year before. Where are we right now with that? Can you talk a little more about?
We're very low, actually, and that is something, and let me just see for the exact amount. I think I did put it down. I thought I wrote down where we were at. Okay, here it is, housing, current. So we've only spent $4,875. So it is a very small percentage as right now. So I do expect that we're gonna spend actually a lot less. And I think this is the direct result of that tax credit. Because I think what we're seeing is that our people are applying those things to things like basic needs like this. Now, it ended
I was gonna say, didn't that end recently?
in December, so I'm gonna be interested to see what's gonna happen now. But, because evictions have gone back, so we are seeing evictions and we're trying to prevent them because we don't want more homeless people out there. But the rental assistance program for COVID is also helping in that aspect too. So there's several things in those areas that I think is the reason why it's down. It's nice to see that we're not having to spend that money. However, also within that housing is, when I do have to assist homelessness in the hotels, if there's no shelters available and things like that. So, but, it's one of those things I think it's more affected by the two assistance programs, the COVID relief and the tax credit. I think that's what we're seeing right now.
So it's your opinion that if those weren't there, we would be looking at the $35,000 number as being a more?
I would say it would be at least up to the, spending what we spent at least last year or more. Because housing actually took a huge jump. As we all know, fair market rent went from $1,511 for an average two-bedroom apartment. It went up to $1,628, so $100, a month jump. So it was a huge jump. We're seeing increases a lot in rents, and that is, going to be something that we will probably be affected in the future. But it's hard to know, exactly. Like I said, it is a prediction, what may or may not happen. But I do think that's those two assistance programs is the reason it's lower this year.
And in the beginning, you mentioned the words affordable housing a lot, and I'm trying to understand, because that gets thrown out in the news and it gets talked about as to whether towns have affordable housing and everything. I'm wondering if you're using the words in the same way that those articles are using it, or maybe you can tell us, what do you mean when you say affordable housing? Do you mean these numbers you just told us, the 1,500 that went to 1,600 for a two-bedroom?
I think what we're seeing is there's a lot more housing that was added to the markets in Merrimack, but not at the levels of fair market rent. So even with the increase of $1,628 for a two-bedroom unit, I think we're seeing that's the newer units that have been built are all on much higher end. And they're
Right.
much more expensive, so people who have,
So that doesn't help you at all in trying
it
to place
doesn't.
people?
I'd
because
say
they're
the
way
biggest
out.
problem is the people on Social Security. So the disabled and the elderly are the ones that I think I feel the worst for, because they have such a, their income has not increased at the same inflation as even
As real
wages
estate,
or
yeah.
anything like that. And so to keep up with that kind of market is not easy for them. And so we're really seeing that I think they're struggling the most.
Okay, great, thank you very much, I appreciate it. If there are no other questions for Pat, we'll let her go home early. Thanks for
Yeah.
being so concise and having a good budget and taking care of the town in the way you do. And we really do appreciate the work you put in.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pat. Which brings us to library,
Yeah,
which is 15 on your tabs.
right. I just want to clarify for the council, we have some newer members. The library basically is when you look at it, the council can make an adjustment to the bottom line of the budget. Meaning that, like, where we're going with Pat, we talked about specific rents and housing. With the library, you can talk about it, make a cut or add. It's up to the library trustees whether or not where that money comes from or goes into. So when you're looking at a library budget, which is different than any other budget that we deal with, it's the bottom line for the library budget, when the council reviews it. versus a line item budget for every other department. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay,
If it
It's the
doesn't, speak
law.
up quickly.
so,
Are we good?
Sure.
So-
Hi,
Great, thanks.
I'm Deborah Koval. I'm the chair of the Library Board of Trustees, and I'm here with Yvette Kauser. It's nice to see you all again.
Nice to have you.
We're here to talk about our budget. There's just a couple of things that I wanted to point out to you. The first one has to do with our salaries and wages. The library has been, or I should say the Library Board of Trustees has been looking at the salaries and wages. It's been part of a process. In 2016, a former board did a wage study, and they tried to see how the Merrimack library salaries compared to local libraries, and found that they were not competitive. So we've been systematically sort of addressing that as time goes on. This year, we did decide to give the staff some raises, but I do want to assure you that in doing that, we looked at the overall staffing needs of the library, at open positions, how we could restructure things. We had a person who was, for instance, promoted. They were still able to cover their desk hours, so then it kind of just shifted things around. So we were really cognizant of being able to address what we saw as a challenge in the labor market to retain staff and be competitive with our need to present you a budget that we felt really comfortable with. So we tried to look at that comprehensively. I think it's no surprise that it's hard to keep people, it's hard to staff things, and I think that's across the board. So we're just trying to be mindful of that, and we have a wonderful staff. We would like to retain them. So that's one thing. The other thing is that the trustees are going to be contributing, as we have in years past, money from the trust funds that we are fortunate enough to have at our disposal. So you will see that there's, I believe it's $12,000 that we will be applying to the budget. So those are sort of the two things. Everything else is sort of the norm, but we're here to answer any questions or provide any information that we can to you.
Finley?
Thank you. I was just wondering on, under the wage and supervisor, we have executive department head. Is that a stipend that somebody will be getting?
Yeah, so we had a staff member who was serving in that function who has left. And so what we did was we did not include the executive department head portion of the position in the person that we hired to replace her. That was an internal promotion. So that is there. That is something that we are addressing right now. We are seeing if there's internal candidates who would like to apply for that. It would be a position that has some more administrative supports for Yvette and that sort of thing. So it was a really great and valuable position, but when we lost that particular staff member, we wanted to take a step back, try to fill the position. And also it was really difficult. We did have a hard time getting candidates. I mean, it's just a very competitive job market out there. So, so it's there. And probably it will be, it's in place of a stipend. There had been a stipend at one point for this, but it just seemed like a better decision to have someone that this is part of their duties, that they would be doing that. So, so it's there, and we are hoping to.
Utilize. So is it safe to, don't want to assume, I suppose, but the head of circulation, which used to be the executive department
Yep.
head, that $42,900 is reflective of a $5,000 deduction for the person who's currently holding it?
Yes,
And that's just a placeholder? So
yes,
in order to
exactly.
utilize that, somebody within the staff, one of those positions, because they're all filled, I presume, will be
Would be like promoted
getting,
and
if they
getting that,
decide that they
exactly.
would like to do that, they'll get that stipend.
Thank you, you explained that better than I did, yes.
That's a miracle. Oh, my word.
Well done, thank you.
Thank you.
Good, because I didn't understand that, but anyway.
Yeah, no, he did a great job. That's exactly what I was trying to say, but yes, thank you.
You gotta tell my wife.
So are there any other questions, comments? The, talk about library materials going up 11,000 or something like that.
actually, I can talk about that. It didn't go up $11,000. So,
Library materials.
8450, it did not go up $11,000. Because the trustees give $12,000. Last year, they gave $12,000 of their money from
Trustee
fines
funds,
and
yeah.
trustee funds. It goes into a separate account, and that's Fund 38. this year when we were doing the budget, I overlooked that in telling the new finance director, that's what I did. So technically, it's 125,558 versus 125,058, which is a decrease of $500 on that line for materials. Because you gotta take the $12,000 for, that they're also putting in again this year,
Yeah,
and that would come out of that line as well.
and that's where that 12,000 is going, is into the library materials.
Majority of the money from that 12,000 definitely goes into the library
Mhm.
materials.
Yeah, there's certain parameters that trust funds have for us and how we can spend it, and that's where we divide it to.
I'm sorry, Paul, you said that number should be?
125,558. It should be $12,000 higher. And that is in 21, 22 voted.
So it's corrected on mine already.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
got it. I got it.
Yeah. Yeah, in your book it is, because there's another fund for the library trustees. It's 3815. It's an accounting issue that wasn't.
Okay. In that case, I don't have any questions. So if there are no other questions or comments, we appreciate you guys.
Okay.
Thank you very
Great,
much for
thank
coming
you.
out. You want to say anything, Yvette?
I was just wondering if it would be helpful to clarify the presence of the trustee board, or the reason why we have a trustee board separate from the council. 'Cause
That's
I know
probably a
you-
great idea if you could give us a
Counselor
little more
Hunter,
clarity
you kind
of
of
that.
made a little face, I caught that. One of the things that, when you all run for your positions, you run on a political ticket. Our trustees don't run on a political ticket. And because the library serves everyone in Merrimack, every political party, or if you don't want to have a political party, we serve everyone, regardless of your leanings and points of view and belief systems. So the trustee board provides that nonpartisan buffer that allows us to collect things for this side, things for that side. Something to offend everyone is a good collection, So that's why. And if you follow things in library land, there have been problems in other states, other communities, where, someone in your position with control of the budget would say, I don't like this material, it's out, I'm not gonna fund it. And that's very dicey, and we don't want that. And so fortunately, in New Hampshire, our RSAs provide that buffer with the existence of the trustee board, who are elected, they're from our community. So just,
Thank you for
Does that make sense?
explanation. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
you're welcome.
I would differ with you on our running on a political ticket, but that's the town council, it's not the state reps or something like that. I mean, I certainly didn't run on it. I don't know of anybody that ran on a political ticket for a town council position.
Okay, thank you for that correction.
But in any case, that's my opinion. So if there's nothing else that we can offer, we appreciate it.
Great,
Thank
thank
you
you
for
so much.
showing up
Thanks
and-
for your
Thank
time. Thanks for your help,
you.
Mr. Ruff.
through
I appreciate it.
Which brings us up to Parks and Rec, number 13 on our budgets.
So if you turn to page 88,
88.
in the books, you'll see an org chart for the Parks and Rec Department. It seems like there's a lot of positions here. It's not. Most of those positions are for
Matt
summer
fills
day.
all those boxes. Is
Yeah,
that
yeah,
what you-
Matt does all this stuff, technically. But a lot of those positions are based out of summer day camp. Right now, we only have 2 full-time positions and 1 part-time position year-round. Everything else on this org chart is basically for the summer and helping out for programs that Matt does during the summer. We do offer school week vacation camp as well, but those are all extra people and extra positions. Matt's budget is pretty much, I hate to sound like a broken record, but flatlined.
We want to call it level funded.
Level funded?
Flatline sounds so medical.
All right. Level, all right, I'll use the
We
term
don't need
level
to do
funded.
CPR on them.
No, not yet. But level funded budget, he did take into account some of the initiatives that we kind of talked about that we'll be bringing forward, such as the community gardens, and whether or not we want to do a farmer's market again. He has proactively looked at those and included them in his budget this year. The one other thing Matt will be talking about is increasing some wages for part-time, because the camp really does need maintenance. And it's, besides Matt and James and this one part-timer, if something goes wrong with it in the summertime, they might have somebody to help them out. But if camp's closed in September and they gotta they're building shutters, they're trying to fix things of that sort. So he's looking for some additional help when it comes to raising hours, I should say, increasing the hours of that maintenance person to help him out. So that's all. I don't want to steal too much more of Matt's thunder, but have at it, Matt.
All right, sounds good. Good evening, and thank you for having me here this evening. Parks and Recreation exists obviously for quality of life issues. Obviously, programs, open space areas, parks, safe places to go, safe places to stay. As we've seen the last 2 years, people have flocked to our parks, especially in 2020, but certainly, it's still up certainly from, I don't have any formal kind of, attendance counts just because I don't have the ability to do that, but I just anecdotally, people are using parks even more than before, 2020 was a tough year for us, obviously when the pandemic hit, we lost, 75% of kind of the programs and services that year, until we kind of figured out how to survive in that world. And so last year we spent the bulk of the year just trying to kind of rebuild back to where we were. We're maybe 2/3 of the way to that point, just to get back to where we were, kind of December of, January of 2020, where we're slowly kind of crawling our way back. As Paul mentioned, hiring, and as Yvette mentioned too, hiring is tough these days, and trying to get people in to do things. And so it's been a kind of a slow slog just to get back there. But, obviously one of our big success stories of last year was that camp did return. We spent an inordinate amount of time, kind of stringently following all the CDC guidance. And, I actually sat on one of the state task force for helping to write the language in 2020 and into 2021. Obviously we were thrilled, one, to be able to run last summer, but even more so, thrilled that we didn't have a single case of COVID in camp all summer long. Not all camps can say that. I know of several in the area that had, 75, 80 kids having to go home for 2 weeks on quarantine, and just, they weren't as stringent on some of the rules and things that we were doing. So we had a good summer, getting somewhat back to normal. The other, big event of last year obviously was the town's 275th anniversary. And as a committee, we were, going into it was like, how do we do this in the middle of a pandemic? How do we run big events? How do we, whatnot, But throughout, with our committee throughout the course of the year, from April to November, we were able to put on 32 different events last year. And just different ways to kind of share that education with the town. But at the same time, we are kind of glad that it's done. Because it was a lot of time getting all that done. So moving on to our actual budget. So our budget is kind of broken down into two components, the kind of the taxpayer funded side, and then our recreation revolving fund, which is kind of the programming side. And so we'll start with kind of the taxpayer side here. And as Paul said, our budget realistically is more or less close to what it was a year ago, But there are some things that we were asking for. You know, a lot of the things that we do have increases on are things that we don't have a lot of control over. Natural gas, water, insurance, you know, those types of things. But what I want to do is go through kind of the main areas where there are changes, and kind of talk about them. Now, as you recall, going back to 2020, you know, one of the things, you know, obviously we saw trash and vandalism at Watson Park, at Wildcat Falls, and at Wasserman Park Beach. And last year, we had changed the part-time park attendant that we had on weekends at Wasserman to a 7-day-a-week setup. Partially because we had hoped that our beach project would have been done at that point, but also anticipating continued fallout from, you know, what we saw in 2020. Fortunately, that didn't happen. You know, our attendance was up certainly at the beach on the weekends, but on the weekdays, it's, we had an attendant there on the weekdays from 3 to 7 p.m., and we might get 10 people going by that they're checking passes. It was kind of a waste of money to have them sitting there twiddling their thumbs. You know, it wasn't worth it. And so what we've proposed on the park attendant this year is weekends, essentially, doing Friday nights still, because that's realistically where you're going to see it more, 4 to 8, and then Saturdays and Sundays, as we've done in the past, from 11 to 6. Last year, we had initially budgeted $10 an hour for that position, but as you can imagine, we had trouble filling that position at 10. It ended up jumping up to 12 last year. And so if you look at that particular line item, it's actually budgeted at $12.49, because I'm really hoping that the girl that did it last year comes back and does it again. And that's where she'll end up being this year, you know, if she comes back. Since August of this year, you know, one of the things that was interesting is obviously everybody canceled all of their weddings and reunions and birthday parties in 2020. And this year, they're coming back in full force. Everybody postponed a year and said, okay, we're going to do it. We're going to find a way to do it. And so, you know, in August, you know, we were, once camp ended, you know, we were starting to take function hall rentals again. Since then, we've already done $7,000 this year in rentals. It's, you know, 2 or 3 weekends every month, some weeknights scattered in. You know, it's been really nice. I mean, we're back to, I think, at its peak in 19, we were like $8,500 for the year is where we were slated to be. So, and we're only 6 months into the year. So, they've been doing really, really nicely in bringing in that revenue. But one of the challenges of that is that, you know, because they're on weekends and because I have no staff during the school year, oftentimes when it's a Saturday or Sunday rental, guess who's coming in to open the door and close the door, and that gets old. And that gets, you know,
Sure
I
does.
live half an hour away. My program coordinator lives an hour away. So guess who gets the job? You know, and you know, one of the things I hate giving out keys to public buildings. It's just we've had issues in the past with it. You know, either they get lost or there's vandalism, or you know, just one of those things that I just don't like doing. And so it's like, We're experimenting with kind of remote door locks and things right now, but in the meantime, one of the things I'm doing in the budget this year is proposing some hours for that kind of park attendant, if I can kind of keep her on part-time year-round, so that she can come in, you know, 4 hours here or there to cover these rentals so that I don't have to. And so we've budgeted out kind of two rentals a month, average time of 4 hours, so it's about 80 additional hours in the budget. For that park attendant, just to kind of come in, sit there, be there. If there's an issue, they can address it. You know, that type of thing, and then close up. And so that's kind of the park attendant one. On lifeguards, as I said, hiring was a challenge. Last year we were budgeted at 1142 at this point last year, and we couldn't get anybody. I opened the summer with 2 guards. I need realistically 3 at a bare minimum, and we had 2 weeks where we had 2 guards, and there was a couple of days in the end of June last year where James and I were literally having to stand by the beach and going, okay, well, there's, you know, from the camp we've got 35 people here, so I can only take 15 people from the general public. And they didn't like that very much at all. Fortunately, we only had a couple of days that happened, but you know, it's just what it was. So we ended up having to bump the lifeguard pay up to $15 an hour. We managed to pick up 2 more people, and, you know, we'll see how that does this year. Hopefully those from last year come back, and hopefully we pick up a few more, because we were not fully staffed. We had a budget last year to go to 7-day-a-week beach lifeguard coverage, and I couldn't get the guards. And so we had to kind of scrap that plan last year. We're hopeful again this year, and, you know, we'll see what happens. But, so it is budgeted that way to plan for kind of 7-day-a-week lifeguard coverage, but,
Is that during the summertime when school's out?
yeah,
or-
this is kind of mid-June to mid-August is when we cover the beach, the town beach.
Okay,
And again, similar with the waterfront director position is actually split half between the day camp and half between the town, which is why the number's kind of lower. But there, when we raised up the lifeguards, we had to raise up the supervisor, you know, as a result. Our maintainer one is our part-time year-round maintenance person. He works 18 hours a week during the school year, so kind of September to June. And then during the summer months, we're able to bump him up a little bit to 25, but it's not enough. I mean, we've got, you know, 16 buildings in Wasserman Park. Most of them are 40 and 50 years old. And it's like, it's a losing battle sometimes. It's just constant maintenance. And obviously, we end up spending a whole lot of money on independent contractors to come in and fix some of it, because it gets so bad that we have no other choice. And so it's a struggle because we just don't have the hours to do it, to fix things, you know, before they get too far gone. And so one of the things that let me back up. While we do get some help from Public Works, it's mostly like they mow the lawns over there, they blow leaves or rake leaves, and, you know, snow plowing in the winter, and then kind of water line repairs, but realistically, they don't touch the buildings. Unless it's something really specific on a very rare occasion. And so it's either my 16-hour-a-week person, or it's hiring somebody from the outside at $100 an hour or whatever it is, you know. And so one of the things we're looking to do for this maintainer position is, as I said, he's 18 hours a week during the school year and 25 hours during the summer. At this point, I'm looking to raise him just to 25 hours a week year-round. Ideally, I need full-time, but I know that's unrealistic at this point in time, and so, you know, it gives me something. And gives me a little more time to fix, like right now, screens and shutters and that kind of stuff that we just don't have time to do during the summer months. You know, it was interesting this summer, you know, with all the rain that we had. It was like every other day, you know, all of a sudden you look around and like the dog park and the weeds are this high, and then you look and then the road's washed out again, or, you know, it's just constant battle. As Paul mentioned, you know, he had approached me after the Agricultural Committee disbanded about the idea of the community garden and potentially taking that over, as well as the, you know, farmer's market. My understanding is I'm presenting that plan to you in February, at the end of February is what Becky told me. So we won't get into too much of that, but one of the things I'm proposing here is a second part-time person for the summer, just to give my 25-hour week, you know, another 20-hour person, to try to get caught up on some of this stuff. You know, we were relying on volunteers a lot this summer, for like weeding and things like that, like the dog park, because we just couldn't get it done ourselves. And so, like I said, it's 20 hours a week for 12 weeks of the summer, just another summer seasonal person, specifically for maintenance of the park, to hopefully help us maintain the buildings and kind of the grounds better, as we go from there. The last other position in here is the farmer's market attendant. Now, when the Agriculture Commission ran the farmer's market and the garden, obviously it was all volunteers, and I don't have that luxury, you know. I can't.
However, this position we've had a position like this in the past. It used to be in DPW, but since Matt's taking it over, the position got moved to Matt, and it's only for 48 hours for the summer. If we decide to go ahead with the plan of a farmer's market over the summer. So
Yeah.
it's $600
Yeah.
right now in the budget, but that's where it's really is, but it was just moved from DPW to here. So, that's basically Matt's part-time people, and that's really where the bulk of his money is increasing
Yeah.
for the year, so.
And just touching kind of one last time on the maintenance and kind of the buildings, I'll tell you this, at one point this summer, I had 3 different buildings with roof leaks that I couldn't get a contractor even fix. I had 2 different failed septic lines. The road washed out almost every other week. What else happened this summer? Roofs, oh, and then we had, some vandalism, and it was just, some of it was nuisance stuff, but it's like, somebody shattered one of our basketball backboards. And of course, the cost to replace the thing was just shy of where the insurance threshold was. And so, it's like just, we burned through our maintenance budget, and I'll talk about this when we get to maintenance in a second,
Just,
but
I
we
want to
burned.
make a comment. It's interesting that you're bringing that up, because the MYA has had a lot of vandalism on their sheds and stuff too.
Yeah.
And it's not that they're stealing stuff.
Yeah.
That's just breaking the doors and making a mess and leaving the stuff there.
Yeah,
So it sounds that Wasserman's the same thing's happening.
yeah,
We've replaced one door on one shed at Martell Field.
Yep.
I want to say 4 times this year. And there's footprints on them, kicking them in, and they don't touch what's inside of them.
No,
And there's expensive stuff inside, they just want to kick the door in.
I've often wondered, this is probably not the appropriate time. I know that they have those the steel sheds. Maybe it's worth looking into those in terms of replacement, but that's not for you.
Yeah.
But, we have to unfortunately think about things like that, that cost us money, and, I don't know, cameras, I don't know what, we've talked about possible actions, but I'm not sure what the answer is.
Yeah.
But you're right, it's the same place has been over and over.
All right, so that's on the kind of the wages side of things. So we'll kind of move down under 8352. There was a $500 increase here, which was previously I was the only one that had held professional certifications. My program coordinator James now is certified as well. Obviously, in order to maintain that certification, he has to go to conferences and things. So that we bumped that a little bit just to allow for that. Recreation programs, 8374. Most of that stayed the same. The only difference here is, again, looking at the potential for the farmer's market. I'm anticipating some costs associated with doing that. And so I created a line item here. My thought on the farmer's market initially, if we do it as 12 weeks instead of the 26 that they were doing, and I'll get into that later when we present in February, but just things like signage and supplies and cones and, all that kind of stuff that I don't necessarily have, There's also the potential, like if, rain space and, like right now when we have our concerts, more often than most times, we can usually go into the O'Leary Center, so we don't have to outright cancel. But if I've got the farmer's market at the same time on the same day, which it has been, I don't have that option anymore, so now I'm looking at the school. Now I'm having to pay to go to the school, But again, we'll get into that more in February. And then lastly, under the general budget is the infrastructure line item at the bottom, 8505. We have one set of problems. Over the last, 4 years now, we've been working on slowly we had all our roofs in Wasserman Park evaluated, and kind of had the contractor give us, okay, what's our lifespan left, because they were all kind of coming up right around the same time. And we're down to the final 5 cabins that need new roofs. 3 of which, as I said, started leaking last summer. And we've kind of put temporary patches on, but we're trying to do all 5 of them just to get them done and be done with roofs for hopefully, 10 years or something, The thought process is that we'll get a better price with the contractor if we say, okay, you're gonna do all 5, because they'll bang them out in a week, versus come in now and do this one this year and this one this year, and so it'll end up resulting in a savings on that overall. And I think,
But, so what did you end up with there?
oh, sorry, $32,000 is the cost to do the 5 roofs.
For 5 roofs?
Mhm.
Okay, why is there a $62,000 difference between the department ask and the town manager's?
I could
Budget.
talk about that.
Okay.
There was irrigation, request for irrigation at Wasserman Park.
Yeah.
Right now, honestly, I don't know if we really want to go there with an irrigation system at Wasserman Park, for several reasons. I don't think an irrigation system is going to help those fields. I think we'd have to redo those fields and bring in a lot more loam and seed, and to get bang for the buck with an irrigation system. Right now, there's a lot of rock, very shallow rock in the surface on those fields. So I just didn't see it as a fruitful expense at this time to put irrigation in without looking at the whole picture of, we have to upgrade the fields.
Okay,
And if I can just add to that, first of all, the request came from the MYA. If you've ever been down there in the summer, well, most summers except for this one where we had all the rain, but most summers, 2 weeks into football season, it's just dirt. That whole area where they practice is dirt, and it's they've shown me videos of it, of, the kids practicing, and they're literally running through like a dirt cloud, and we've run hoses out there. The fire department's even come in and watered down the field for them at times, and so they were looking for a more permanent solution, but as Paul said, he's taken that out at this point until we can kind of look further.
that's just for that one field next to the Norman French playground?
Yeah.
$60,000.
I know, it's unbelievable.
It's a lot of square feet, that's a lot
Well,
of
you gotta
heads.
do we need to bring water further down, or is
No,
water?
the water's at the function hall, so it's not that far. The irrigation contractor I talked to, which is Scott Courier, who does all the town's fields, gave me an estimate of anywhere between 40 and 50, but there's also the caveat of when we start digging, how soon are we gonna hit ledge, and, that kind of issue. So, the 62 initially came from an estimate I had from another town based on the size and kind of distance, but we're in the ballpark.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And so I think those are the main things I wanted to point on kind of on the taxpayer-funded side, if there was any questions.
You were gonna talk some more about maintenance building and grounds is going up by 6 or 7,000,
Oh.
8321.
I skipped that line. Hold on. Oh, yeah, so it went up,
7,000, well,
it's
The
now
request
5.
was
It
7.
was higher, and Paul knocked it down a little bit, and that's okay, but, we talked about some of the repairs. Last year, one of the, as I said, from July to October, I spent this entire line item, just with it was just constant repairs this summer, the roofs, the septic lines, the vandalism, and just, there's not enough. And, kind of coupled with that, within the last year, we started getting charged out of this line item for things like the dumpster at Veterans Park started getting charged to us, which, and porta potties, extra porta potties. They'd been in DPW, and things got moved around. And so they suddenly started charging to me, and I wasn't expecting it. So some of this $5,000 increases, one is to give us a little bit more working money, but also just to cover kind of estimated costs with, some of these other expenses, the dumpsters, the porta potties, those kinds of things that, just so I can keep making, like I said, it gets really expensive and we run out of money really quickly with repairs.
is the skate park ramps, is that an annual sort of a maintenance fee kind of a thing?
Yeah, it's about every 18 months. We look at the panels over there every year in the spring, and if any of them are cracked, then we replace the ones that need to be. But we'll usually spend as little as $2,000, and sometimes it's as high as $4,000. It just depends on the year. But it's an ongoing process, so,
Just to maintain it, yeah.
just to maintain it.
How are things going at the skate park? Is it?
They're okay. We're in this weird kind of limbo state because we don't know if the school's gonna let us continue to stay there or not. And it's hard to wanna spend a whole lot of money in there when they may not, a year from now, they may say, okay, we're gonna use this for something else, get out, who knows?
The other good thing about it is that there's a camera there.
It's what?
There's a camera there,
Oh,
and it's actually on the school's camera system. So if there is vandalism, please find out,
we have a
go
chance
down
to see it,
and
yeah.
see who's going on. The other thing is, I just wanted to mention, that's just for the materials, the
Yeah.
$2,240.
right.
DPW does the repairs over there.
Yeah.
And the insurance company is very stringent on what we have to do to repair it. There was a couple of pieces, not to prolong this discussion for $2,000, but there were a couple of pieces that the corner was cracked on it. And the insurance company came in and said, you need to replace that, because it could break.
It
And I'm
breaks or somebody trips.
Yeah,
or
trips or
any
something.
other
So
thing, yeah.
you got this 4x8 sheet, you got this little piece that you gotta repair. Thing is, you can't take it out and say, oh, I'm gonna reuse it someplace else, because the
It's
screw
already
holes don't
curved.
line up with anywhere else. So it's like, you're taking it out and it's gone. So that's why the $2,000, and we try to go 2 years. So we'll look at what we have in the budget this year, and if this gets passed next year, and we'll combine them two in the June, July timeframe to buy, to replace. So that's what we do there.
And just on that, we have a placeholder in the CIP budget for 2025, 26 for, new skate park equipment. Obviously, we haven't gotten that far down the road in planning. At some point, we are gonna have to do something, whether it's stay permanently. The problem with the park that's there is it's got a wooden substructure. And of course, when those half pipes kind of melt into the pavement, that the ramps get all warped, and that's what causes them to break. That structure will not move. If we try to move the skate park somewhere else, we need to start.
Oh, yeah?
If we try to
Take
move the
Tracy
skate
Cullen.
park, we'll be starting brand new. The estimate I had, last time I looked at it about a year ago, to build basically what's there with kind of new modern materials is about $70,000. And then from there, you gotta put in a base and, all that stuff, and prep the site and all that. So it's probably gonna be 100, at some point if we have to move the park somewhere else. So again, it's in for 2025, 26.
Nancy? Murphy?
Oh, yes, thank you. I just wanted to know if, I'm getting some clarification, because I'm confused about the funding source and who does the work. Like, it was mentioned that at the skate parks, the money comes out of Parks and Rec, but DPW does the work, right? Yet, at the camp, DPW doesn't do the work. How is that? I'm just confused about how the decision is made is what DPW does and what they don't.
Basically, DPW does outside work. They don't go in and fix buildings. And that's how the difference is. The maintainers and stuff that Matt's asking for in the budget are to maintain the buildings themselves. Whereas as DPW does the outside work. So DPW, when we just had a well system in place, they would go and set the water lines up. They would cut the grass. They would do that kind of maintenance. They wouldn't paint the buildings. They wouldn't do a roof. They wouldn't do other things that was on Parks and Rec. This is also morphed into I don't know, 2008, I guess, was the last time we had a park maintenance division
Oh,
in the budget. And so that's where the lines kind of got drawn of who does what work. So DPW took over the Parks Maintenance Division, and they used to do these functions. So that kind of morphed and stayed with Highway. And the other functions of painting buildings and repairing shutters and screens was part of the Parks and Rec department, and that's where that stayed. So that's how the delineation became. I hope that answered your question.
It's great, thank you.
So, Watson Park and the volleyball courts and the skate rink and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Is that in your budget or is that somewhere else?
It's not, well, it's mostly highway, is where most of, like, they cut the grass,
The
they
grass.
maintain the courts, they maintain the ice skating rink. You know, so most of that is under highway.
Okay,
Right.
So my attendant only deals with Wasserman Park.
Parks Maintenance Division.
yeah,
So that stayed with highway. So they would maintain the skating rink and the volleyball courts and cutting the grass and, we used to have a grant for the porta potty, but that ran out, I think, a couple of years ago. So, but once that ran out, that also went to highway division to care for those things.
now, why would that go to highway and not to Parks and Rec for porta potties or whatever? I mean, you say you were complaining about dumpsters and porta potties showing up in your budget suddenly, and
Yeah,
Watson is kind of your thing, isn't it, from Parks and Rec perspective? But
I guess I didn't get a clear answer from Paul and Tom on that, but, I don't know. I'm getting charged for a dumpster at Veterans Park at the moment and porta potties at Watson, and I'm not sure why.
at Watson or at Wasserman?
Watson.
At Watson, okay.
You have charged the porta potties over there.
Huh?
You're being charged the porta potties now for Watson.
That's what he just said.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't used to.
Well, that's because we had the grant money that ran
Right.
out. That L-chip money, so.
Yours look like as good a place as any.
Yeah, sounds good. Anyway,
Okay. So you don't actually spend any, I mean, you don't even have an electric bill for Watson for the volleyball courts and the,
well,
Skate.
technically, I get the electric bills to approve, but it's just,
You have to pay for them.
it's paper, yeah.
Barbara?
So for 8244, water.
44, yep.
Now, I know Wasserman and MYA probably use water.
Mhm.
Abby Griffin?
Mhm.
Is there,
Irrigation.
okay, that was my other question. I finally came up to that after a couple of hours of contemplating where the water was. So I was there. So all those water charges, for the most part, if there's no building, is irrigation.
Yeah.
Okay. And for 8373, which is Memorial Day parade wreaths for the graves.
I actually have nothing to do with Memorial Day. It's the veterans, the VFW and the.
Okay, so that's the money that goes to the VFW, because the VFW actually buys the flags.
Right.
They switch off every year.
No, they don't.
Well, they're supposed to. We used to pay one year and one the next.
Yeah,
Yep, that's what we used to do. They
I
used
know.
to come in and do it.
you might want to check. Anyways, so that's what that's for, is the wreaths, the two
Yeah.
wreaths.
It just lives in my budget, kind of like
Yeah.
the MYA budget lives in my budget, which I don't technically control. The adult community center, same thing.
Yep,
The senior center budget, I don't control any of those, so.
perfect. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? Nancy Harrington?
8202. It shows up, of course, Finley is over here pointing to his computer saying, most of these questions we have are answered in the computer. Anyway, 8202.
gotta come out of the dark ages.
I don't even see an
Maintenance
8202.
services.
Where the heck
I don't
is
see
it?
an 8202.
It went, that's exactly, it shows up in the very the top, budget expenditure report.
Oh, okay.
And it went down it went from zero, it was 3,500 been asked, and it's been zero. So that, but it did not show up in the detailed one. So I was just confused. Basically, it's zero, but why do we even have it?
Once again, that is in the wrong line. It should all be moved down one. The 3,500 should be in office supplies, 8203, and the 500 should be in uniforms,
Okay,
8204.
so it's literally just a numerical.
Yep.
Okay. And I'll just, as a liaison from the council to the MYA and to the O'Leary Center. Basically, they're pretty much even funded. The important thing you need to know about the MYA, there had been an audit issues years gone by. They've been, and Paul, you can verify this or not. My understanding is they've completed their audit, in fact, on time.
Yeah,
And they really are, and I go to their meetings, and they really are very careful. And they're trying to maintain as much as possible the maintenance of that financial report. And Paul can verify or whatever.
Yep, we did get the audit on time. Honestly, I think one of the best moves the council ever made was to tell them they needed a bookkeeper,
Right.
because it has made the audit go by a lot quicker. Questions have been answered a lot quicker, so the auditor can finish on time. There was one issue that the auditors did present, and I believe the MYA is going to take that under advisement and correct it. But we're waiting for some paperwork to pay them. And once we get
They've
the
talked
signed,
about.
once we get that signed paperwork, we're ready to cut the check to them. And it was a one-time
So
check.
basically, I just want to reassure the council that they're doing what we've asked them to do. And I want to be able to give them some kudos for the work they've done to get there, because it was a lot of work.
They've come a
But
long
they
way in
did
3
it,
years, and
and
they
they're
did it.
maintaining it, which is the most important thing.
They've come a long way.
I have to imagine it's beneficial to them as well, because
Absolutely.
now there's some clarity to their finances and things that might have just gotten lost in the cracks, I guess, are now theirs to utilize in a more appropriate way, so.
Yeah, it was to their advantage as well.
I think so.
You're absolutely right. In terms of the O'Leary Center, you're gonna be receiving a, invitation. I'm not sure, we were gonna have it sooner, but now, again, they wanna wait a little bit to have an open house, to be able to show the council what they've done with the money that we've provided for them. And again, I wanna stress, they provided as much as their own money as well. So between the combination of the two, you're gonna see some really improvements over there that we're gonna be very, happy to show you.
And just so the council, one point, you bring up the O'Leary Center. The O'Leary Center is open. The senior group that meets there have decided not to meet.
Correct.
It wasn't because the O'Leary Center said,
No.
your doors are closed. They said, our doors are open, this is what we're asking you to do. The seniors didn't feel comfortable meeting because of what's going on, so they decided to not hold meetings. So once they're ready to hold meetings, they can go right back into the O'Leary Center.
Yeah, the O'Leary Center is maintaining the town's criteria, but have also made it aware that any group that uses it, they can certainly make their own criteria as well. And that's what the senior centers have done,
Above and beyond the town's
Correct.
criteria.
and they certainly have the right to do that.
Sure.
So that's just a little feedback on those two.
So okay, great. So we're not trying to cut anything that they've requested from Inway or
No,
the Adult Community Center.
quick question, what is the status of the beachfront?
The project
Renovations.
started, supposedly it's all dredged out.
It is.
So depending on the weather, they're hoping to get the wall in, but all dependent on the weather. You've been there more than me.
I know. I actually posted some pictures to our Facebook page this afternoon.
Okay.
The dredging is all done. They've started building the wall. And so far, the weather's held out, so they're plugging right through. I kind of thought winter would shut them down, and, they're,
Nice.
cleaning
They-
right in.
Did they set up, I don't even know what the wall they call, they set up those,
Coffer dams or
Yes.
whatever
yeah,
they call
covered
it?
it.
Yeah.
I'm bummed out I didn't go see it, because I
I
wanted
didn't
to see when
either.
that happened.
Is it still in place or they finished, they took it all out already?
Probably for
I
the
think
winter.
they took it out, but I'm not 100%. I didn't walk out on the docks.
Yeah, because they pumped the water out and actually dug up
Right.
the bottom.
Right, yeah, so, yeah, it's back in. Yeah, the curtain's gone, so, because the water's back in.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And they've dumped sand on the beach there, or they're gonna
They,
do that?
they will, they haven't yet.
Okay.
They're kind of in the process of taking out all the silt and muck and all that still.
It was a wild operation because they built a pit. They dug a hole, built a pit, took the stuff out, put it in because it was wet to let it leach out.
Yeah.
Back in the water to leach out, because if they would taken it out in their trucks, they would just been splashing it all the way to wherever they had to go. So they went with that in their organization. So it's, they're working on it. They, hopefully it will be done, and if they can't get to the sand this fall, winter, as soon as they can get in there with it, they'll put sand down. So,
But yeah, they're in the process of building the walls now, so.
right.
Nice.
What's the status of the dock there? Did we end up replacing that, or we put that off to
We are
wait?
going to, it's supposed to go out to bid soon. I just talked to Xenia about it,
It's in this year's
Yesterday.
budget,
It's in the
current year budget. to
current year
replace
budget,
those.
so
So
spring.
between now and June, you're gonna have that taken care of?
Yep.
So that'll be part of the whole project, right? Great. Any other questions for Parks and Rec? Lon?
Not a question, just a comment. Matt has been very, very diligent keeping the Parks and Rec committee up to date on all of what he's talked about and what we've discussed this evening. They heartily endorsed this budget coming forward. At one point, a comment was made kind of warning me not to fuss with it. I took that for what it was worth, and that's okay. But I will say this. Matt has not misrepresented anything. I think it would be difficult for him to overstate the mission that Matt and his crew, the Parks and Rec Committee, accomplish each year. And it's one of those areas where they call it the face of the town. Yes, the summer camp probably brings in some non-resident, but it's a very important part of what we do. And I just can't endorse Matt and his crew and the committee enough for keeping up to date, Matt keeping us up to date, the committee themselves is very interested in taking care of the dog park, the community gardens and so on. Very, very good job. So to the person that made the comment, it's not that I'm acquiescing to them. I'm suggesting this budget is adequate. And what Matt has brought forward, which maybe the manager didn't agree with, was not pie in the sky. It was necessary to at least bring up and have the discussion. Thank you.
I certainly echo that. Matt, you've done a wonderful job with Parks and Rec here in this town and made it into a real department, I believe. In the past, we've been kind of wishy-washy around whether we are. I mean, I remember when I moved into town back in the early 90s, there was a Parks and Rec department, but
Not like this.
not at all like it is now. And so kudos to you and your staff and the work you've done. And I appreciate the extra time you have to put in to unlock doors and keep it safe and things like that. So I'm all for your request here, and I appreciate the work that you folks are doing. So please pass that on to your staff as well.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
The only additional thank you I'd like to add is also the entire 275th Anniversary Committee that did such a good job over this year. Spent a lot of time, a lot of effort. Every event was successful, and it was during trying times. So I want to thank that group, you and that group, thank you very much.
And I went to a couple of them and saw you there at each one of those, and I'm sure doing a lot of background behind the scenes work there, so thank you. Any other questions or comments for Parks and Rec?
did you
Matt,
want to
thank
talk
you very
about the camp stuff at all? or
That's
that-
probably a good idea, yeah. Summer day
Hopefully there'll be
camp.
no questions, but.
I'd like to kick this one off. So, years ago, we decided to vote, the residents of Merrimack decided to vote to make the day camp and recreation program a revolving fund. What a revolving fund means is that the money that you earn from the program goes back into the program. If you don't have money in your revolving fund, you can't pay staff, you can't pay the program. Matt has grown this program from basically ground zero up to allow for these items and these recreation programs have increased because of what Matt has done with the day camp and use some of that money to help bring in more money through other programs that he does do, like yoga and other issues that, not other issues, but other programs that they do at the function hall. This is 100% not included in the budget. It's not included in tax base. It's 100% paid for by the users, and it's what they call in the state a revolving fund. So it would not show up in the appropriation side on the warrant. But because it is a town function, and the way the revolving fund was set up is that the town manager has oversight of the program with the Parks and Rec director, we'd like to bring forward every year what the rates for camp are going to be for the council so they could hear that. And they are increasing this year. Matt informed me that they are increasing, not a lot compared to inflationary rates out there. Once again, it's trying to get people that can work at McDonald's for $15 an hour to come in and work for the town. The one thing we have going for them is that we do offer them 40 hours a week for the whole summer.
And lunch.
And lunch. And lunch. And that's the other thing. Our day camp sets us apart on our day camp is because we offer lunch. And we're still one of the lowest day camps, even though we do offer lunch. Other day camps around, you gotta bring your food in for your child. This, they don't even have to worry about it. They sign them up and they know that they're gonna get a good meal 5 days a week when they're at the camp. So Matt, why don't you explain what your thoughts are on the pricing for residents and non-residents for day camp?
Okay. So you kind of took out half of what I was going to say, but that's fine. So for this year on camp, we ended up going up $15 a week per person per week, on both the residents and non-residents. So day camp runs, the basic camp day is 8 to 4. We also have a morning extended care from 7 to 8, as well as evening extended care for working parents from 4 to 6 for an additional fee, which is $20 a week in the morning and $40 in the evening. Our rates are competitive, even most years, I try not to go up more than 10 at a time, because it's a big jump. When you add that all up, it's, a couple $100 extra a year, for working parents. That adds up really quickly. And so we kind of purposely try to stay on the lower end of kind of the spectrum. I mean, there's camps out there that are, Melody Pines in Manchester is kind of like the cream of the crop, and they're $290 this year, I think. But we were $240 last year. We went to $255. One of the challenges, obviously, we're kind of still in this COVID world, and so we're still overhiring a little bit. We're trying to overhire to give us that, in case I suddenly lose 3 staff, that I'm not suddenly out of ratios and, those kinds of things. Our camp is licensed by the state of New Hampshire. We're also accredited by the American Camp Association, which is also fairly unique for municipalities. Most of my colleagues in other towns are not. So we're at the gold standard, and still able to do some of these things. Paul talked about lunch. Parents love it. It's kind of like one of the top things when we do our surveys at the end of the year. You mean I don't have to pack my kid lunch every day? Great, and so yeah, they get a hot lunch every day. So camp is going and it's growing. Last year we did our basic Nanticoke Day Camp, and we also ran our theater camp last summer. We did not do our field trip program for teens last year. We're hoping to do it this year, but obviously it just, right now, it kind of depends on where things go in the COVID world in the next 3 months. But we're shooting to bring that back. Our field trip program with the teens actually generates a decent amount of revenue and it, you know, cause it's, you know, you're paying admissions fees and bus costs, which are fixed. You know, but it's not, you know, like with our day camp, you know, our biggest age groups are kind of 1st and 2nd grade. But they've got, you know, a 1-to-6 ratio versus our teens, which is a 1-to-10 ratio. You know, so obviously it's much more staff because, you know, it just is. And now on top of, you know, the camp, you know, so for example, last year, running camp, it cost us $208,000 last summer to run camp nuts to bolts. You know, we had 844 registrations last summer. Direct expenses, it was about $158,000 last year. But on top of that, the town charges us what we call a salary allocation. Every year I get an email from Paul and Tom that says, okay, this year you need to recruit X. Which this year's X is $59,994. And it's kind of like HR's time, payroll's time, finance's time, you know, those kinds of things. And so not only do I have to cover my direct expenses of running camp, but I have to cover that extra $60,000. Now, before COVID hit, we used to kind of take our top 7 programs, the things that would always run, Campwood being one of them, and, you know, tennis lessons and swimming lessons and some of these other things, school vacation weeks, and we'd kind of divvy them up percentage-wise and say, okay, you know, camp's going to pay this and swimming's going to cover, it needs to cover this, and that would help us figure out our pricing strategy, you know, where we needed to be. COVID kind of threw that out the window a little bit. Now, our camp programs, collectively, our regular Natticook Day Camp, Trek, which is our teen program, and our Summer Stage, which is our theater camp, collectively, they cover 92% of that $59,000. Just, those are my big programs, and so that's where we can afford to cover those costs. That leaves about another, what is it, $4,500 or so. That's kind of all of the remaining school year programs, the independent contractors that we hire, the school vacation week, the you know, road races that we run, wilderness first aid classes that we offer, you know, those kinds of things that we do during the school year generates the rest of that, you know, surplus. And so kind of at the end of the summer, I say, okay, Tom, you know, just to confirm, camp is paying, you know, out of the camp fund, we're paying whatever it is, $53,000, and then on the school year side, okay, you're in confirming, you know, we kind of talk back and forth to confirm that money in that transfer happens. I will say we did open camp registration up 2 weeks ago on January 8th, and we've actually filled up 22% of our spots already in 2 weeks. And so it's 244 registrations in 2 weeks, which is really nice to see. I'm shooting to get to 980 or so, about 100 more than last year, because we were limited on we purposely limited ourselves. Plus, we didn't run the teen camp last year, so I'd like to get to about 980. You know, would be, you know, where I'd like to be this year. So I think we can do it. It's right now we're kind of working on staffing, and that's the other challenge, which will, you know, control that number. Fortunately, we did ended up last year with last year's hiring struggles. We did raise pay rates for most of our camp positions. We didn't do the camp counselors, but kind of everything above there, the swim instructors, the lifeguards, the activity specialists, you know, arts and crafts, archery, nature, you know, kind of the specialty positions. So a lot of those have gone up already. You know, we're still at $10 an hour for camp, which is tough when you're fighting against 15. But it's, you know, as I said earlier, you know, 40 hours a week, you know, Monday through Friday, essentially, you know, 8 to 4 or 10 to 6, you know, no nights, no weekends. They really kind of like that, you know. And so that's kind of one of our selling features. And so hopefully, you know, we'll see in the next couple of weeks. We send out our staff notices to last summer's staff right before Christmas and say, tell us by the end of January what your
To
plans
reserve
are
a
this
spot,
year,
yeah.
and then we'll go from there. So February 1st, then I can start worrying about where we are or not.
So the only program we need to run is the theater camp,
Is it what?
is the theater camp.
Yes.
Because what happened is the town bought the property from the Wassermans. The Wassermans wrote in the deed, and because it was their day camp, Natticook Day Camp was run by the Wassermans. When we bought the property from them, they wrote in the deed that if we're gonna run a day camp or a summer camp, whatever we wanna call it, we'd have to offer a theater camp. And that was because of a family member of theirs really liked the theater, and she passed away. So in honor of their child who passed away, they would like us to run the theater. So out of everything, we could have the day camp, we have to run the theater program. And that's why you'll see it's a 1-week theater program. In years past, it was 2 weeks, but that's the only thing we have to really run. All the other stuff, all the other rec programs are on top of it, but that's the only one that we must run.
And do we, in the 1-week program, do you get an attendance?
Oh, yeah, yeah, we
mean-
get, it's really, we've been running that for 5 or 6 years now. We get, 20, 22 kids every year. For that 1 week, we have a teacher from Sauhegan High School that comes over and runs it so that over the course of the week, they go through, they learn a play, they learn set design, they learn costumes, they learn music, choreography, all that. And then at the end of the week, they put on their public performance for the rest of the camp, as well as parents and
Anybody that
general
shows.
public that shows up, so.
And 1 week is just because
It's
that's
once
the
she's
the
can
time you
do.
can do it? Yeah,
She's a teacher and wants the rest of her summer off.
the nerve. Okay, great. Is there anything else we need to talk about or any questions people have relative to summer camp and the revolving fund? So the revolving fund is paying all of this and covers the administrative fee that you were talking about. You sounded like you were a little frustrated with paying that. I don't know if, it's just an overhead cost for you, yeah. Okay, just making sure I understood.
Counter offer.
He'd rather use it for fun stuff.
Yes.
Well,
Well, there's that too.
but there are expenses, and they're
I
real
understand.
expenses. Lon,
Yeah, not to tell tales out of school, but there
He
are
will.
times when Matt is a little nervous about camp registration and that income as opposed to the administrative fee, because if he doesn't make the camp profitable, or how do you say it, if he doesn't meet the line, those guys over there on the other side of the room, they don't diminish their cost. So it comes out of programming somewhere else.
But those people would have to find the money to help them.
Let's just say I'm
Remember
looking at
that.
the budget on a weekly basis, looking at the income that's coming in to make sure.
Oh, I bet.
That money's where it should be.
I mean, just scrolling right through this whole thing is pretty amazing what you do offer and what you have done. On the number for the administrative costs, you said 59,000, I'm showing 57. It's,
Oh, did I miss?
no, I just wanted,
Well,
it
it's-
could be wrong on
were
mine.
you talking about this current year or next
57,994,
year?
Yes.
Yeah.
57,994? Okay,
I did
yeah,
note
because
it
that's
down.
what I have. Thanks.
Any other comments, or
Thanks for everything.
Barbara, Healy?
Well, it used to be that, you looked forward to springtime, you looked toward Pitchers and Catchers Day. But now I'm going to look for camp registration, because then I know summer's really
Yeah,
coming.
it's real happening.
What's that?
It's really happening.
It's really happening. There is a chance.
Very
Okay,
impressive.
do you have anything else for us, Matt?
I don't.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Definitely appreciate all the work you're doing and the efforts. And urge you
You
to
don't-
march forward.
You don't have to.
Thanks.
Thanks, Matt.
Oh, okay.
Which one?
Media is next,
32.
32. So we're going to move to media at this point, which is 32.
Correct. Media is level funded except for 2 items. The first item is Nicholas is proposing to make his part-time employee go to full-time due to all the additional programming that he has done and what they have taken on and what they were able to do during COVID, and additional programs such as covering the sports and things of that sort. He's looking to make that position a full-time position, so he'd have, right now he has 2 full-time, 1 part-time. He would like his division to be 3 full-time people. And the other thing is underneath subscriptions, and he's asking for $10,000. And he can explain it much more eloquently than I, so I am not even gonna try. But those are the 2 major items in his budget. And once again, this is paid by the cable franchise fees that are charged by Comcast. We set the rate, Comcast collects it, and then pays us quarterly. At the current time, we are at, the general fund, in the revenue section of it, is looking at $250,000 that we use of the cable funds that we get to help offset taxes. And Nicholas's department uses 150, and the reason why we were doing it that way is to keep reducing his fund balance. And his fund balance, we keep reducing his fund balance by doing the 250 and the 150 into the program. Once again, this is not taxpayer money. It's not on your tax rate,
Tax base.
tax base. It's not, you don't see it in your tax bill. You see it in your Comcast bill, and for those people who have Comcast, they pay a franchise fee. So that's where we stand. Nicholas, take it away.
Sure. Nicholas LaValle, Town of Merrimack's Media Services Coordinator, 17 years strong, happy to be here. As Paul said, all of this is offset by cable franchise fees. We collect 3.75% of gross annual revenues from the cable subscription portion of your Comcast bill, not internet. Over the past 4 quarters, we've collected nearly $387,000. So that's how much we receive about a year at this point. I'll be happy to start right from the top of the spreadsheet. Probably the biggest change, which what the town manager touched on, is the proposal to make our part-time media assistant a full-time position. And as Paul mentioned, one of the reasons why we would like to do this is because I think throughout the course of the pandemic, we have definitely raised the expectations as to what this media division is and also could be moving forward. And I think even if we were to be out of the pandemic tomorrow, we would have to continue doing some of the things that we've done throughout the course of the pandemic. And this particular position, the media assistant position, not only does this position help out, with meeting coverage or event coverage like the sports, that, like Paul said, or concerts, we also rely on this position to create staff-produced content. 2 segments in particular are Merrimack in Motion segments and Merrimack Moment segments. That's what this position creates. These segments take time to create. They take time to produce and script and get people involved, get people on camera, and then also edit the pieces themselves. What's great about these short-form staff-produced segments is they work well on social media. They're between 90 seconds, maybe up to 7 minutes, but they're shareable. And really what they do is, in both cases, they inform residents on the decisions that elected officials are making and keeping people up to date on what our great boards and committees are doing, the decisions they're making in the Merrimack in Motion segments. And the Merrimack Moment segments really shine a spotlight on the community and different things that happen in the community, and the people in this community as well. Just off the top of my head, I'm thinking about some of the things that we covered over this past year. Most recently, we did the Wreaths Across America segment that also touched on the work that Pat Murphy and the Welfare Department does. We've worked on segments for Merrimack Moment and Merrimack in Motion with the Department of Public Works, Parks and Rec, and then also the Town Center Committee and the 275th Anniversary Committee. Content is king online, and video is definitely the most powerful form of content online, I would say. I might have some bias to that, but I do feel that way. And we'd like to keep creating content like this, while we simultaneously offer residents studio time to create content of their own. And we go out of our way to put the resources in the hands of residents who choose to do that as well. We're very lucky to have a very talented, outgoing, ambitious person in this position presently. We think that this is sort of the direction that community media is headed. And I'm very fortunate to have staff that not only believe in community media, but also really care about the community of Merrimack. So in that line item, it's not directly listed under wages, but if you were to turn the page, and Tom pointed this out to me earlier, it's under the 328143 line. You see, notice there's part-time to full-time, so the difference is in that number there.
Those are fully loaded costs, that it's not all salary.
Yeah, I was gonna
For
say.
health insurance, all the
Right.
insurances, retirement.
So the individual that's in that department, that position now is willing to move into a full-time position?
I'd hope so.
Have you talked to him?
No, that person would be willing to move into a full-time position for sure.
Okay.
And I hope we can keep him here,
Sure.
for sure.
I mean, that's a big jump if he's been working 20 or 25 hours to suddenly go to 40 hours, but
Right now, that they're at 28 hours a week.
28
They
hours.
were scheduled for 25 years prior. In this past fiscal year, we had been able to bump them up to 28 hours.
okay, so that much just to bring him up to 40?
Yeah.
A lot of that
A lot of overhead, yeah.
A lot of that is the benefit, the health insurance.
Yeah, he doesn't necessarily get that, but that's the cost to the town
Right.
for a full-time person.
One thing I should also mention too is that everyone in this department recognizes that the hours are, even though we have structured hours, scheduled hours, all of us maintain a lot of flexibility to get our work done. Whether that's stay late to cover meetings or come in on a weekend to cover an event. We've done plenty of Friday night football and basketball games. And anytime there's been sort of a special event that the town's doing, particularly with these short form segments like Merrimack Moments. We had the Angels of Hope ceremony that was on a weekend, and the holiday parade and things like that. So we all maintain the willingness to work a flexible schedule.
Well, and you're not working an 8 to 5 type time frame, right? You should swing your shift a little bit to 10 to 8 or
We all swing our
noon to
shifts a bit
whenever, yeah.
in different directions depending on what needs to be covered that week. And I'm proud to say that we still maintain regular office hours, even with the 2.5 of us right now. But we're stretched a little bit, and even those 12 hours would definitely help in that regard as well.
Cool.
If there's no other questions on that, I can move down the list to subscriptions, which the town manager had pointed out is another change. I'm asking to budget $10,000 for subscriptions. And there is kind of a note underneath there, Tyro Media Systems, Cablecast, and streaming. The past year, we've been streaming on various platforms. We're part of our Cablecast system when we made the upgrade 2 summers ago. That gave us the ability to stream to our website in HD, and it also put us on streaming devices, Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon, eventually Amazon Fire. The service that gives us the ability to do that is part of our Cablecast system. It's called Reflect. The Reflect service is $2,200 a year, and the first year came with the upgrade to our Cablecast system, so that's due to expire July 1. We want to enhance that. Right now, if you were to watch us on a streaming device, you'd have to download an app called Cablecast Screenweave. When we do our outreach to residents and explain to them how they can watch Merrimack TV on these apps, it's under the caveat of find us on these streaming devices via the Cablecast ScreenWeave app. And we share that app with different access stations from across the country. Well, Tightrope offers a service for community TV stations to have a dedicated app. So we would have a dedicated branded app across all devices. So if we were to ask residents to watch our content, stream a town council meeting, watch a live basketball game, simply download Merrimack TV. And these dedicated apps would be across Amazon Fire TV, Roku, Apple TV, Android devices, and iOS devices. So you'd go to, if you have an iPhone, you'd go to your Apple iOS store, and you'd just search for Merrimack TV and download it, and there it would be. Same thing with your Android devices and so on. The cost of developing the first branded app is $1,500, and it's $1,000 for each additional. So for the first year, with renewing our Reflex service and also establishing a branded app across devices, it's going to be just under $10,000. It should be closer to $8,000, so I'm budgeting for $10,000 in case there's another platform or if there's Google Play or something else that comes along. So that one, I am leaving a little bit of leeway for that. And the cost for each additional year is just $500 per platform. So the initial cost is closer to $10,000, but to renew these subscriptions in the subsequent years would be just under $5,000. Any other questions on that part?
So these so you have a Merrimack TV app, but you have to pay a fee for Android and for iOS and for the Roku and all those, for each one of those platforms?
For each one of those platforms, it'll be $1,000 to establish the app and the behind the scenes, the framework for each additional platform.
And then about
Okay.
half that
For about, and half that
annually.
Annual
annually.
maintenance?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Andy?
Just a question for Paul, to start out with, you were explaining 250 of this for fund balance. I didn't catch that. If you
Okay.
could go over,
Yep,
maybe go real slow this time, maybe I'll catch on.
that's all right. I'll slow down. Right now, we project $400,000 of franchise fees,
Okay,
okay? Of the first $250,000 that we get for those franchise fees, it goes into the general fund as a revenue.
okay,
The remaining, whatever, 150, if they collect 380, it would be, 130, would go into the cable to offset the expense of a $300,000 budget. Because at one point, the fund balance, for lack of a better term, at media division was so large, the council made the conscious decision to start spending that down. And that's why we broke it out, 250, 150.
okay. So we're not, that's coming from their fund balance, not from the roughly 400K that we expect.
The additional, whatever the difference between the 250 and whatever, say they collect 380, that 130, if they spend the full $300,000, 170 would come out of their fund balance to help offset it,
Yep,
because they have to be spent to zero.
okay. It was the fund balance piece is what I was missing.
Okay,
So, thank you.
sorry I wasn't clear before.
No.
So where is their fund balance now?
Their fund balance is sitting around $500,000, $500,000 to $600,000 in that range.
Okay. Barbara, you had a question?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, are you seeing a decrease at all in the amount of the
Franchise fee?
coming in because more and more people are cutting the cord?
It's growing.
Actually,
It's surprising.
it has been pretty constant. We peaked at 402,000 like 5 years ago, but we've had a decrease. But being at the 388,000, it's roughly about a $4,000 difference over the last 2 or 3 years.
All right.
Finley?
Could you tell me where I can find that, Paul? Because I'm looking at I thought it was the revenues, franchise fees, and actuals going all the way back to 16, 17. I have here 241,000. Went down to 203 the following year. 18, 19 was 267, 287, 328. So it was growing here, which surprised me, but maybe I'm looking at the
It's
wrong.
just the number of people apparently.
I think that's what I was wondering, because I was
Population's
concerned that
gone
it was gonna start diminishing, because, yeah, a lot of people are
Just doing into that.
streaming or
not doing
whatever,
the
but.
cable.
Right,
And we don't receive any franchise fees from the internet portion of a bill. which is- I feel like I bring that up every time I come up here, no matter the reason why I'm here, I bring that up, but, and that's one of the reasons why we wanna be streaming is because for those that don't have cable, we still want them to be able to see our channels.
Right.
So Finley, if you turn to page 170, or everybody turns to page 170 in their book.
I'm looking at the tab, the revenue tab.
Yeah, it would
Is it
be.
revenue two,
Oh,
revenue one?
sorry, you're in a different, yeah. If you go down towards the bottom, Finley, of that, you'll see media,
Yeah,
and then you'll see franchise fees, the 71200, 3201 71200.
okay, I might be in the wrong sheet. Hold on, Paul. Sorry.
It's
Further
revenue,
down, that's why you had to go
Yeah,
to 170. You were at
revenues.
166, so.
I'm trying to get there. Oh, come on.
Page 4 or 5, it's just before the end.
You know what? You don't have to burn up a lot of time on this. I can
No,
get
that's all
this.
But Finley, those are the exact same numbers you were looking at, on page 166.
Right.
They're the
So-
same numbers.
Okay, so they're growing in. The numbers that I read out, it wasn't
They're
even, you had suggested it was kind of level, but it's on this sheet, it's growing at a fair amount. So the only concern I have ever had was that it would diminish, and then we'd have to start looking at the budget differently.
Right.
Things wouldn't probably change, but the funding of it would have to be different. But looking at this, it doesn't seem that that's the case.
No, right now, no.
Yep.
Right now, and if we took away the $250,000 that we use to offset taxes, there would be enough money that we're getting right now in the cable franchise fees to operate this budget.
Oh, very good.
Okay?
I thought it was a lot closer, but, so we're gonna end up spending about 250,000 out of that 500,000 that's in the fund this year, this coming year?
No, what we'll spend is 175,000. That's what, 227, sorry, 227 is what we're projecting to spend.
Out of the fund,
Out of the fund.
which is down to around 500K.
Yeah. I can get you an accurate number of what it is, I just don't. Can I see your audit? Thank you.
So the numbers,
Please.
the numbers that he's pointing at further down here are dropping a lot faster. I mean, you're only bringing in 134, you're budgeting 150 in cable TV franchise fees.
Right.
But they're down from 200
franchise
a couple of
fees.
years back, which is what you were looking at.
Yeah, looking
What
at
you see if you look
yeah,
down on
looking at
page 4. If you
surplus.
look up on
Yeah.
page 2, it looks like the numbers are, I don't know what that number is.
One more budget.
3189 number looks like it's going up in values.
The franchise fees, 3189,
Yes, 3189.
that's
Okay.
going down.
It is.
Is what?
I don't know.
I'm just showing him
Yeah,
where.
no, and I have that in front of me now. On this other revenue tab, it was different, and I can get that later.
The tab you're looking at adds the fund balance, the 227, it adds that.
Plus the interest pooled cash, plus the surplus. It's adding up all three. See here. Here's the fees, it's going down.
Right.
But the
it's-
total is going up, which is what you're looking at.
Yeah, no,
Okay, yes,
Tom,
right here, yeah.
Tom can explain why it looks like what I think the confusion might be.
Okay.
That line item, Finley, that you were looking at,
I couldn't
on the revenue summary schedule, under the media division, that starts in 2016-17 at 241,000,
Yeah.
Right.
203, 267, 287. Combined in that number is the use of the fund balance from the media division. It probably should be broken out separately, but it's not. It's combined in there, and it has to be in there to kind of make the numbers balance. But that's why kind of looking at that line is a little bit perhaps
It's because their budget's growing.
misleading.
All right, yeah, because.
Right, the expenses have gone up, requiring the use of more fund balance, so that number is growing because of that, really. To get probably the best sense of the trend in those franchise fees, you probably have to look at the revenue detail, and it's in two different line items. The general fund line item, which has been started at 150,000 in 16-17, went up to 200,000 the next year, 17-18, and then it's been at 250 ever since. That line item.
Where is that line item?
It's on page 167 in the revenue detail budget. It's, yeah, it's the very first
Oh, transfer
line
from cable
there.
fund.
So that number is just kind of the allocation to the general fund. The balance of what we've actually brought in cable franchise fees is on page 170 under the media fund. The first line item, kind of halfway down that page,
3189.
of cable franchise fees. There, you got 274 in 16-17, which you'd have to add the 150 that's in the general fund to get the total for that year. 2017-18, you've got 205 in media, and you had 200 in the general fund. And then in all of those other years, you'd need to add $250,000 from the general fund to these numbers here in media to get the total.
It's been around 389 to $400,000,
Yes.
depending on what offers Comcast is offering and things of that sort. There has been a number of people that have cut the cable, but we haven't seen a big drop like we were projecting when we were looking at a bunch of different things, so.
I'll be interested to see, with having another high-speed internet service provider in town, if that changes anything with Comcast service.
Yeah. Because they're just providing internet services, right? They're not,
Correct. And they don't, because it's internet service, they don't adhere to a franchise agreement.
right.
However, there is legislation
There's potential legislation to
That
change that,
will-
but
To change it how?
there's been legislation in other states to try to collect franchise fees from content providers. But realistically, if there would really have to be a major change to the 1984 Cable Act, that would have to be up. To me, I think that would have to be updated to really see anything, have any real change nationwide on a federal level, so.
I don't know if I want that, so I'm just as happy leaving it alone.
Right. And one thing I think I pointed out almost every year as well is that, we do want to have some money in that fund, because if we were to lose franchise fees, or if there were to be a mass exodus of cable subscribers and they just go to an internet service provider, we wouldn't see those franchise fees. I'd like to be able to keep this department going for a year or two without it being presented that it come off the tax roll right off the bat, so. I do think it's important to have some money in that fund in case that day were to come. And,
I absolutely agree with you. and I'm trying to think ahead and figure out where we're at and where we're gonna be a couple of years from now, because if we keep going at the rate we're going, that
Yeah,
fund's
we're
gonna
gonna
zero
have-
out in a couple of years.
We're gonna have
Right.
to start backing out on the $250,000 and back that down.
And I-
Probably this will be one of the last years that we'd be able to offset the full 250. We're probably gonna have to back that number down going forward, because like you said, it's gonna, if it's at 500, we're gonna take 175 out. We're right around that $300,000, and that's that one year.
And so this is something I think the town needs to understand. We've come to expect and enjoy the technology that your division is bringing to the town, being able to watch these meetings, being able to pick up on concerts and all the Merrimack moments and movements and all that kind of stuff. But that comes at a cost, and at the moment, we've been able to pay for that out of the cable franchise fees.
Right.
But that is dwindling. And we need to, we're hooked on what you're providing, I think, you know?
Cool.
And so I'm sure we can't just shut down your division, and, you know, we're up to 339,000 or something like that in
Right.
your annual budget. I guess we need to be aware of that that's gonna come out of taxes in 5 years, or a lot sooner.
Right.
If we want to keep it up at that level and that rate. And I think the town appreciates and enjoys what you're accomplishing. And so that's something that we definitely need to keep our heads wrapped around going forward.
We're very fortunate too in New Hampshire. Merrimack, the media division is a member station of the New Hampshire Coalition for Community Media, and my colleagues at other access centers across the state all, when the pandemic hit, we saw this as an opportunity to thrive and add value to our departments, and that's certainly what we're doing here in Merrimack, and we want to keep doing that. And as I said earlier, we've got a great staff here, Colin and Justin, and our per diem media assistant as well, David, do an excellent job. And I also should not leave out the fact that we have some fantastic resident producers that produce shows on the community channel. They're all excellent. They're really fun to work with. And also our volunteer play-by-play commentators for all the sports. They're outstanding. And I'm sure Brian Gagnon would love to hear his name at a town council meeting. So I want to point out our basketball announcer, Brian Gagnon. But everyone's great. Andy, Dave, Ralph, everyone who does play-by-play. Fantastic group of people. I could keep going down the list if you guys want.
If you have anything else you'd like to present, go ahead.
Sure. So the only other thing I wanted to touch on was under our office equipment. The total amount is again $55,000, which has been kind of the sweet spot where we've found ourselves each year the past couple of years. So total amount is $55,000. I was talking to Tom earlier today, and I had just noticed that there was a slight difference in the format that he had. So, couple of the line items that are, the couple of items that are broken out underneath that don't necessarily reflect what we'd like to spend the money on. There's just two items really. Aside from other cable equipment, that's $10,000. The media staff software, that's to renew our software licenses, that's $5,000. The $20,000 should reflect public access TV studio equipment. And that equipment is relative to equipment and infrastructure in the community TV studio just in the room behind us. It's been over 10 years since we've really made any major investments in the studio there, and we really want to just we want to modernize some of the production equipment we have, and over the overall production aesthetic, the overall look of the studio itself. And we want to do that because it's been a while since we've done that. Most of the shows in the community channel more or less look the same. We'll change the color of the backdrop with the LED lighting or change the color of the curtain, but we just want to do a bit more in the studio there to give it the options to have a more modern aesthetic that you'd see a lot in today's programming. And then the other item under public access editing should actually be public access editing and camera equipment for $20,000. And that has to do with the room further in the back of our facility here. And really, both of these line items is to just, we've spent a lot of time here in the Matthew Thornton room, in the memorial room. We also got some mobile production equipment last year, which has really upgraded what we're able to do in terms of the sports and concerts. We really just want to kind of focus on the TV studio because it's been a while. And the folks that use the TV studio, I think, kind of deserve to kind of have the upgrade. And additionally, I think that if the folks that are doing shows now on the community channel that are taping in there, their programs look a little different. It might grab someone's attention, and it may bring in new residents and also nonprofit groups that serve Merrimack to consider producing content here for the channel. I also want to point out that every resident or nonprofit group that records a program in our studio, they walk away with a video file. So they're here primarily to produce content for Merrimack TV, for it to air on our channels and streaming devices. But they can also, that's their content. They own that information. They produce the segments. They can upload that to a YouTube channel of their own, or they could use it on their social media pages, and we encourage that. We want them to do that. And, you know, it all comes back to community here in Merrimack and community that's, programming that's created here in our community TV studio. And it's not just the community that uses it, or the residents that use it, or nonprofit groups. It's also different town departments. Our town manager has taped a few shows in there, and we're working with the council as well to tape programs. If you could respond to my email by Friday, that'd be fantastic. Just throwing that in there. And
I was gonna figure out a way to do that.
But no, we really just want to kind of modernize the TV studio a bit more. Justin has some really great ideas that we want to give to our residents and the folks that use it. I think that's it for me, unless you have any more questions.
Did we get an answer on the fund balance you were looking?
I gotta do some numbers. I'll get you an answer.
Okay, thank you.
We'll work on that. Any other questions, comments? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Keep up the good work.
Thanks a lot.
Do
I'll
anything you
make sure
can to
to
reduce the
answer you.
cost so we don't kill the fund balance too fast, but, you know, keep it under control.
Thanks a lot.
Thank
Have a
you.
good night.
When did you get your Oscars?
We did receive 2 awards from the Alliance for Community Media.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
we've got a round of applause for that last meeting, so thank you very much. Colin, our part-time media assistant, he does have a regional Emmy. So, and I keep telling him, please bring it in. Let's take credit for it, but he has yet to bring it in. So,
Okay,
all right. Thanks a lot, guys.
great, thank you.
Thanks, Nick.
Well, saving the best for last. That brings us up to fire.
I wanted to give the new guy a lot of time to be able to
See how it goes.
see how it goes and all the fun stuff that he has. I do want to say that if you just take this budget and look at it and look at the bottom line, it's sticker shock. It appears that it's going up $653,000. But remember, we have a SAFER grant that is offsetting more than $800,000 of staffing costs going up. So that's why, even though his budget's going up so much, we have that SAFER grant for those 8 individuals that are starting on February 27th. The grant starts on February 27th, and that's why the budget's going up to account for those positions.
How long does that SAFER grant pay those positions?
3 full years.
3 full years?
3 full
For all
years.
8 positions?
For all 8 positions and benefits. The only thing it doesn't pay for is equipment.
Is the what?
Equipment,
Oh, yeah.
Like uniforms and
Yeah.
boots and,
uniform, boots, turnout gear.
Sticker shock will happen in 3 years.
Yep.
But we're slowly working that in with items that we are buying, such as the upgrade to the communication equipment. That's $700,000 that we're paying for. So we'll have to budget looking at those kind of items moving forward. So
Right.
that it doesn't hit all at once with the sticker shock on the budget.
Chief, welcome.
Thank you.
With that,
Yeah.
do you have your top hat and cane or?
No, yes, and while I'm new to, this community, I certainly have my knowledge of budgets, and everybody likes to do it a little differently, so I'm not sure quite how you guys want to receive the information. Some of the people I've worked with, they would ask me questions, we'd go line by line. Others just wanted a general summary. So I'm not sure exactly what it is that you want to hear from me. So I'd rather hear from you. You guys have gone through this, because I've put it together along with the town manager, so I'd maybe to save a little bit of time. If there's pointed things you want more detail on, let's talk about those things instead of me just going through everything line by line by line. But
Well,
I'll leave that up to you. If that's what you
Yeah.
want, we'll do that. But we're kind of late in the evening, so whatever I can do to help you is certainly something I'd like to try if we can. So with that, whatever you wish, we'll make it happen.
What I'd like for you to do is, if you think there are items that are significant as far as changes are concerned, maybe you could touch on those.
Okay.
And we'll ask questions as we go along.
Sure.
Or if people have specific, well, that's the way I'm used to doing it.
Okay.
So,
All right, sure. So, go ahead.
Hold on, Chief, one sec. For everybody here and at home, the fire department has 2 unions. They're in contract, and there's a 2% raise scheduled in the budget for those unions. Okay?
part of the contract
Part
that
of
we
the
approved
contract that we approved
a year or two ago.
3 years ago.
3 years ago.
2 to 3 years ago.
Yeah, okay.
So they're in the budget, so the contractual wages are already in the budget, so.
Yeah, so just a general overview. What I tried to do was, again, because I'm not sure how everything all works, I thought it would only be fair to try to come in with a level funded budget as best as I could. And those areas that I knew we needed improvement were really the only areas that I looked at. So salaries, contractual, I don't have any say on that. That's how that
Nothing
goes.
you can do with them. Yep.
Right. Other than, the clerical wages, level funded until you guys decide what raise
Right.
percentage you want to decide. Then we make that adjustment. But other than that, everything pretty much stayed level. So when we look at, you see the increase of $300 and some odd thousand in wages hourly, that's the full-time staff. The overtime, we had to compensate for extra overtime hours because of the wage increase. And then also some of the overtime hours increased because of the commitment to try to keep 11 once we go February 27th. So I worked with the town manager. He has quite the calculator spreadsheet that he's developed over time, making averages of earned time and what is historically taken versus what we need to pay for. So we worked, as hard as we could to try to come up with a number that we feel confident will get us through the budget year for this particular cycle, maintaining 11 staff as was the commitment. So that's why that number looks the way that it does.
Can you point out that overtime that you're talking about, is that a substantial increase or decrease this year with the additional staffing, or?
About 25,000. So I'm looking at line last 4 digits will be 422 as well. It looks like 8111.
Yeah,
Overtime other,
right.
okay, went up about 25,000, 26,000. Now again, we're lucky. All of our new people really don't have any earned time. So we don't have to really compensate them because they're probably not going to be taking vacation or personal time because they don't have any, because they have to earn it while they're working. So we tried to make adjustments for those. Look at this, they're going to call out sick. They may have a situation that, they need time off, and it is what it is. So again, working with the town manager and his spreadsheet that he has from data over time, we've done our best to come up with a best guesstimate of what we think.
It's probably not fair to hit you up about the actuals from 2021, but maybe Paul can comment. We dropped it way back down.
Well, the actuals for 2021, don't forget, was mostly COVID. So there was a lot of overtime for COVID. Believe we were staffing,
Staffing 9 or something?
we were staffing, I think, 11. I think
Oh,
it
really?
ended up being
Okay.
11.
With overtime.
With overtime. One of the reasons why overtime you're not seeing a huge jump going to the 11 staff is because in years past, it was coverage for daytime attendance because it was 10 on, daytime attendant added up. And then we said the fire personnel could cover the daytime attendance up till midnight. So really what you're looking at is that 8-hour shift from midnight to 8 a.m. to come up with the additional staffing. Because we already accounted for over, not in this budget, last year's budget, a couple $100,000 or so, I believe. So it's just that little segment between 8 midnight to 8 a.m., those 8 hours. And that's why it's not this huge number of hundreds of thousands of dollars. But as the chief said, once these guys are on staff for years, they're gonna start accruing it, and that number is gonna be raised to keep the commitment to 11 all the time. So,
Finley?
Yes. Hi, Chief, thank you very much.
Sure.
I hope you're enjoying yourself.
So far, so good.
Very good.
Excellent.
Enjoying, should you define enjoy?
No,
If you're
that's
loving,
not
if you're loving what you do, it's not work, right?
That's right.
So they say. In that overtime account, 8111, you have overtime for projects, and I was just at about $8,000. I was curious on how that comes into play. And then beyond that, it's EMT recertification training and as well as paramedic in-house educational shift class coverage. Is that because they have to leave the premises, or is this training that happens within our facilities?
Well, we do the best we can to have training on duty, and unfortunately, over time, they're getting busy. So when you take a class anywhere else, you're expected to be in the classroom in order to get credit. Well, if they're out running calls, they can't get credit for the class. So we have to start figuring out a way to pay for those classes and that continuing education that's required for them to maintain their certifications. So we've added some additional hours to start to figure out how to do that. Because again, we're obligated to make sure they have their Con Ed to be certified as paramedics or advanced EMTs or whatever the level is. So we were very fortunate back in the day to be able to do all of that on duty, but things are changing, the department is getting busy, so those downtime, if you want to use that for training, is not as plentiful as it used to be.
Okay. And then the projects, do you know what that'll?
I don't off the top of my head, but my
Okay.
suspicion is that, if we have to send a truck somewhere and we don't have anybody to go, well, we got to spend overtime to bring people in to do that job, aka a project, or if there's some other type of situation within the building or department-wide that we need to put hours at to improve or something to work on. And my assumption is that's what that is for.
Okay.
But I really didn't adjust much of that at all. We left most of that.
Is
again.
what, yeah. Okay.
Yep.
so
Until I learned more, I really didn't want to mess with this too much.
No, fair enough.
So-
Absolutely.
And I'm sorry that I don't know more. I mean, I've only been here 2.5 months.
So I'm gonna help
I've
him
learned
out
a
a
lot in
little bit.
my 2.5 months, but I don't know everything yet.
Yeah,
So
no.
I'm gonna help him out a little bit on the projects. That's, he gives a project to XYZ to check out communication in truck. They do the project, that's to cover cost if they have to call when they're off duty, if a vendor calls them back or whatever. Those were kind of projects that were done in the past. They issue a project for a specific purpose, and then the gentleman comes back, and if he has to work off duty to get it completed, or he gets calls while he's off duty, that's what that was for. The paramedic in-house education shift class coverage, that's our homegrown paramedic program.
Oh.
So those are for the paramedics that we sent to school to
Mhm.
learn to become a paramedic. They have interest in it. All the classes aren't on their off days. So if we have to send somebody for an 8-hour class on a shift, that's to cover those 8 hours on the shift.
Okay.
It's for their class time when they're on shift. It isn't for their residency, so to speak. It's only to cover if they have to go to a class or when they're scheduled to be on shift. And that's what that overtime was for.
Okay. Thanks. The only other thing I need, and it's not part of your budget, but I really need a better understanding that I've tried to get it for a little bit, but we've had some changes that have happened over the past couple of years. I'd like to know how we roll equipment.
I have it with me in my pocket.
You too.
Absolutely.
Then
I listened to you when we spoke.
And
I
I
pay
appreciate that, because it's important. I don't need it for tonight, because it
Okay.
really kind of is out of.
Whenever you
anything
want that
I would plan on
presentation, you
doing.
let me know.
As soon as it can be fit in, because it's important to me, because I
Absolutely.
think that, I've said before, and probably said it to you, I don't recall specifically, that sometimes it seems a little overzealous, and I'd like them a little bit more comfortable feeling about
Absolutely.
the whole thing.
I'm ready to go tonight, but if you want to wait, that's fine too.
Listen, I like my colleagues, and I like them liking me, so I won't do that tonight, but.
Whatever you wish, absolutely. But no,
Thank you,
I was prepared for that particular question, because again, we're talking about funding the fire department.
Yep.
And how does it work? So that's a question, how does it work?
Yep.
So I have an answer for that if, when you're ready to hear more of that story, we certainly
How
can get
long
into
of an
that.
answer is it?
It's not very long. to be
Oh.
honest with you. It's only it's a 5 minute, I got like 3 or 4 slides. Like you wanted to know where
Oh,
does
if you don't-
everybody work?
That's up to everybody
Um,
else. I'm good with
We
it,
can certainly do whatever you wish.
one way or the other.
I think we ought to take a few minutes
Okay.
to pick that up if you.
I don't know if media
I
needs
guess-
to hook me up here to this,
Yep.
the laptop
that.
that we have in front of me.
Did
If
you
I
have
can
a
just
question?
plug my drive in.
Eventually.
Eventually.
Well, now we're breaking all.
Okay. Yeah, there you go.
Every computer's different.
I know where I wanna go. If you let me go where I need, I'm good to go here.
I would just drag onto the desktop and open it from there. Although, would you say a 5 slide?
Yeah, 5 or 6 slides. It's not very many.
Do you need pointers with notes?
No, I don't have any notes with this one, no. No. Okay. So, how is the department staffed and what are you paying for? Right, and what do we have on duty every night? So, or every day, every night. So, this is a basic overview. This isn't detailed, so it's basic. Okay, so there's me, the department head, 2 assistant chiefs, and they have groups that work under them. So one assistant chief, again, basics, works with the firefighter side of the house. The other one works with inspections and code enforcement building department. Underneath the firefighter, the assistant chief that works with the groups, there's 4 groups. We have group A, B, and C and D. Each one of them has a captain and a lieutenant. The captain is at station 1, the lieutenant is at station 2. So at station 1, here's the breakdown of how many people are there. The ones in yellow, those are the ones that you're paying for now. That's kind of what we've got staffed now. The one in blue is the one we pay for now. However, if there's a vacation or there's a personal time or whatever, we don't staff that. We drop the number of people that are on duty at station 1. The one in white is the firefighter EMT daytime position. And again, if that's not filled, we don't backfill that either. At station 2, there's a lieutenant and 2 firefighter EMTs. With the grant that we got and the council's approval, the department's gonna go to 11. So that's why those 2 positions next to the blue and the white are yellow. Because now they're going to be full-time positions, constantly and consistently staffed.
All at station 1.
All at station 1. So what equipment do we staff? What do we run? So ambulance 1 is staffed, engine 1 is staffed with 3, an officer and 2. The ladder, again, under our current staffing until we get to February, is not always staffed because of vacation time, earned time, sick time. We don't always, that's why you'll see the blue EMT there, because it's not always there. And the white is only there during the daytime. So if we don't have the full staffing of 10, then that yellow EMT firefighter goes to engine 1. So now there's 3 firefighters on that truck instead of 2. Engine 2 and ambulance 2, they're out of station 2. Those are staffed with a lieutenant and 2 firefighters. When we get to February 27th, this is the staffing model. Consistent, always functional all the time. So that ladder 1, ambulance 3, they'll take whatever the call is. So if we need a second ambulance, 2 firefighter EMTs will take ambulance 3, and the last firefighter EMT will stay at the station and backfill on the engine if a firefighter call comes in. We can't do both trucks, but that staffing of those 3 people will staff either the ladder or ambulance 3. And then station 2 remains the same. They're either staffing the engine or ambulance 2. They can't do both because we don't have enough people.
Right.
So it's first come, first serve, whatever the call is, that's what they do. Okay? So again, and I just put this quick slide together as well as to how many people we have and we're out, what do we do for numbers? So as far as EMT basics, there's about 8 of them. EMT advanced, we have 13, and we have 8 paramedics. And again, like I said, we have 4 captains, 4 lieutenants, 10 master firefighters, 13 firefighters, and 13 probationary firefighters. That means those people we just hired recently, they're within that 6-month to a year window, so they're not fully off probation yet. We have 13 of them. And we're looking to bring on 7 more. So that number is going to jump up to 20.
And all of these master firefighters, are all EMT basic or better?
Correct. Yes, Yep.
I thought so, I just,
absolutely, yep. And that's the basic layout of how we run and operate.
okay, and.
Now,
and-
for response,
Mhm.
I think that's the next section of your question, is why do we sometimes send an engine? Why do we sometimes send extra pieces of equipment? Well, when I first started, it was only 2 of us that went on an ambulance. And you were told and tasked with, get it done. Well, it didn't matter what the level of call was, the skill needed, or how you had to do it with 2 people. Well, we've learned over time that this is a team effort. And we have better patient outcomes with a team effort and a team approach. And with all the technology and equipment that we are allowed to use today, that takes people to run that, and it takes people to manage that and work through the call and have a good outcome for the patient at the end of the day. So we will send extra people on higher level calls. Someone who's having a respiratory distress event. Well, we don't know what that is until we get there. So let's send, everybody goes, let's evaluate the situation. If it's a critical patient, critical call, we'll put more people to help that patient. If it's not, well, then the engine guys will probably just help the ambulance guys pick up equipment, put it back on the truck so that they can, get out of the scene a little sooner than just 2 of them trying to bring in the equipment, bring it all back out, work with the patient. It actually is more efficient for us to sometimes send more people.
Okay. Because a fender bender at the intersection of the Four Corners, Wire and Bedford Road.
Yep.
Almost no damage at all. Multiple vehicles rolled, the engine, the ambulance, and as well as a couple cruisers and all. And it was truly a nothing call. I mean, the person, they may have been transported, I don't recall. I think it's
Sure.
one of those things that they just want to protect themselves.
Sure.
And so, and this is from, not me personally, but a family member personally, so I
Okay.
know the experience
Sure.
completely. Fluids on the ground, it was a gentle touch, guy taking off and stopped, and the one behind hit. So anyhow, my only concern with rolling all that apparatus, if we didn't have these potential staffing issues, it wouldn't be a big deal. But when we have them all on the road over here, it's when I hear the complaints that we're running too many, we needed more manpower to cover it, but when our manpower's all run over to a call that might not be necessary.
Well, again, and again, I have a lot of history with the fire service. Unfortunately, when we get phone calls into the dispatch center, and it's not their fault, some people are not very good at giving information. So we don't really know what we have until we get eyes on it. So we would like to at least be proactive and get equipment on the road just in case. Now, again, you're right. If we don't need to have the equipment there, we send it home. But if we did need the equipment, there's no delay. We've immediately sent the equipment and the staff to manage the event, whatever it may be. So for us to roll the dice and wait until somebody gets there, well, we're there. We might as well use the equipment that we have, be ready, and respond. And if we're not needed, we send them home. But I'm not a person that likes to delay.
No, and fair enough, but if there's no fluids on the ground, it's really no damage, somebody can make that determination pretty easily, I would think.
Until we get somebody there, whether it's a police officer or our ambulance crew or somebody that has
Okay.
public safety knowledge, we don't know. Sometimes the
Oh, no,
callers
law
are
enforcement.
somewhat,
Law enforcement, no, absolutely. I mean, if they're not calling and saying, hey, it's not a big deal, then something's gotta change. That isn't the best way to do it. If dispatch needs some more education, then we have to really start looking at that, because, there was some pretty hardcore complaining before you came on board.
Okay.
About being able to go home after 24 hours and all those things.
sure. Yeah, no, we can certainly review everything that we do, and that's what we should do to make sure that we are doing the best that we can, and is there room for improvement? There always is. So we certainly can look at all of those things as we go forward. But that's typically why you will see an engine and an ambulance go to a motor vehicle crash, is sometimes, and again, it's not their fault, the public gets hysterical, they're not sure, they're excited, the dispatchers are doing the best they can to ask questions, and sometimes the caller just doesn't really, is too much distress from the event that they just experienced or witnessed. And really, you don't get good information
Okay,
sometimes.
no, very good.
That make
appreciate
sense?
it, Chief. It does.
Okay, awesome. And does that help you with the staffing level? Because I know that was a question that.
It does.
Okay.
The next thing I would have liked to ask for, but I hesitate right now, is the There was a graphing situation, that we went through a few years ago.
Okay,
And it showed where there were overlapping calls. I mean, it's.
that's a whole nother piece that,
Right,
to be
and-
honest
and
with you, this town has a lot of back-to-back multiple calls.
And that's what is claimed, and so
It's amazing.
and they probably do, but I'm also very curious on the downtime situation.
Okay.
Because some of that, when I'm looking at the logs, which I did for a period of time.
Sure.
When the big complaint went out that we
Okay.
couldn't go home after 24 hours, and I saw expanses of 5, 6, 7 hours of an overnight where
Okay.
there wasn't a call going out.
Sure.
But then the call came in at 7:45, and the shift was supposed to change, and they couldn't, and because they were on a call, and
Yeah.
so.
And those things happen. And unfortunately, the way it works is, if you're on call from 8 AM to 8 AM the next day, you're there till 8 AM the next day. If the call comes in at 7:59, you're obligated to take that call, unless your relief is
there
willing to
already.
take
No,
that call.
absolutely,
Because you can't draw that line of, well, he's getting off duty right at 8. If your replacement isn't in, someone has to go.
Right. And I never knew it to be a problem when I
Right.
had family members in the fire service. That never was an issue before, so.
But you certainly, I will probably forget some of the messages that you're looking to get answers to. But if you could put that in writing and get it to the town manager, then get it to me. I will work on putting something together to help answer those questions that you have,
All right,
if that's
you.
okay.
No, that's wonderful. I
Okay.
appreciate it.
Sir? So that's the salaries, unless somebody's got other questions on salaries and what we're trying to do and accomplish. Again, I pretty much left it level funded and
Barbara,
worked
you had a
on
question?
improving areas.
Yeah, but it's further down.
Okay, Nancy, did you have a question on salaries, or?
Yes, I did. Thank you, Chief. On page 33, could just clarify for me, the Assistant Chief Support Services it's $102,440. And I see on the
Could you, I'm sorry, Nancy, if you could tell me what,
8103 wages.
page
supervisor.
33, 8103, sorry, yep.
sorry about that.
And I see on the front sheet there that the Assistant Chief, part of the support services, there are 4 different things, and one of them is a health officer. And from what I could see, we have 2 health officers, is that accurate?
Not that I'm aware of, no. We have,
On the state side, it says we do.
Yes.
Okay.
We technically have 2. We have a building and health official, and then we have a health officer. But on the state site, our building and health official is considered a health officer as well as the health officer.
So is Erin Olson the health officer or?
The health officer.
She's the health officer. And who's the building and health official?
I really,
It's a gentleman,
it's a gentleman that we have. I really would not want to put names to
Okay.
everything in a public meeting.
Okay, no, I'm just trying to understand like what the difference is for the health officer. So it's two different.
The gentleman who's the building and health official
Uh-huh.
oversees the health officer.
Okay.
yes.
And that's been the way for years.
Okay.
And
And I
trust
just
me,
started
our-
listed under the fire department.
Yeah, our health officer is a very busy person, especially given the COVID situation that we have, and she
Mhm.
works very hard, and then she's also going out doing inspections on restaurants and, the delis and everything else that we have in this town, so she's a very busy person. Along with sewer connections and those types of things too, she's working on all those issues.
Okay, so that's for, is that 2 positions for that's the wages?
Well, you're in the code section, not
Oh,
fire
sorry.
section, so
Page
let me get to
33.
that.
That
No,
8103.
what you're asking for, Nancy, is
Yep.
that person has those 2 positions in the fire department.
Yep,
One position in both of those positions are actually in the code department.
okay,
He is a assistant chief in the fire department.
okay.
Yes.
So that's why his salaries are here, and that's his support services. He does all the support. He does the building in the fire department. He does the code enforcement.
Like I said, like I showed on my slide, he handles and manages the inspectors for the fire department and also on the code and building side.
Okay.
So he helps with all of those things, yes.
And we have one part-time fire inspector and
Yes.
one
Full-time fire marshal,
fire marshal. Thank you.
yes,
All right, thank you.
yes.
Okay, I think you can go on.
Okay, any other questions with salaries as far as our people goes and those types of things? Okay, the other big increase that you'll see is in 8202. For some reason, and this was brought to my attention, was that was only funded at $1,800 last year. Well, that's the account where we buy all of the paper supplies for the building. We certainly overexpend that every year, and I think you can see that on the actual that was spent. Certainly 1,800 wasn't accurate. So somewhere 5,000 got removed last year, so I had to put that back in this year to make sure that we can, buy the toilet paper and the paper towels and all those types of things for the facility, because, those are things we use all the time, so.
Do you know why that came off? No, that's crazy.
Right, trust me, the staff was somewhat shocked when they saw that, and so I said, okay, well, we'll put it back. I mean, it is what it is, those are actual costs that we
Yeah.
have, so that's why you'll see the 5,000 there. Operating supplies, again, we're trying to figure out what costs are gonna be for things that we need. So we're trying to do our best to, again, minimize what we do, but we're gonna have expenses, so we have to make sure we try to plan for those. Uniforms, yeah, you'll see a big jump there of 13,860, and that's because, again, like the town manager just explained, the new staffing we're putting on, we have to supply them with uniforms to make sure that they look and are professional when they're out there responding and helping out the public. Electricity and gas and water, those are all, again, all guesstimates. We're not really sure what those will truly be. Vehicle fuel, we've done our best to guesstimate what we think fuel costs are gonna be for next year. Telephone, again, those are costs that unfortunately, I just don't know what they're gonna be, so we've put in a best guesstimate for that. General insurance, again, those are costs that, which is something that a lot of it is beyond our control. Maintenance on vehicles, we really only went up $2,500, because again, we just bought 2 new engines, but we still have some older pieces of equipment, much like the ladder truck that I spoke on last week. We still own it, we still have to run it, and I still have to make sure it's ready to go at a moment's notice, so. And along with our ambulances, we seem to be noticing more repairs to our ambulances than we should or could need to be, but that might be a Ford issue. So we're trying to work with the dealership as we go there for problems and issues to see if we can get some of this stuff covered under warranty, but those ambulances are on the road quite a bit.
So maintenance for vehicles in the fire department, are they paying the cost for the maintenance, and the DPW maintenance people are paying for the labor, or?
If we do a maintenance in-house,
Yeah,
yes. They're just paying for the cost of the parts. However, a lot of additional cost in here for certifications, for our pumps and things of that sort on our pumper trucks, certification on our ladder truck, all our ladders, that wouldn't be there. But additionally, if a piece of apparatus goes out, like the ambulance right now is up at Ford.
up at where?
Ford, the Ford dealer. Our
Oh.
ambulance right now is up at Ford because of a oil issue. That would be in that line item too, and we'd have to pay.
Yeah, I mean, and while I have the opportunity, I just love to thank the DPW guys. They do a great job maintaining our fleet to the best of their abilities. But there are things that are beyond their capabilities that need to go back to the dealership, whether it's the ambulance or a fire truck. Because they do the best they can, but when they reach their limit on the level that they can work on it, it has to go out. And then obviously now we're at the mercy of the dealership on whatever it is that they charge to.
That's
Fix the
fine.
truck.
I was just trying to understand the different charges, because there's maintenance of vehicles and charged in the DPW area. There's maintenance
Yes.
for vehicles charged here. There's maintenance for vehicles charged in police, and partly from my understanding and for the public's understanding.
Yes.
Why do we have all these different pockets of money,
Mhm.
and how do we track them?
Yeah, and
Barbara,
if
did
we
you
can
have a
keep-
question at this point, or?
I can ask it now. So, Reed's Ferry Station, last I knew, was only for storage.
So what are you going to?
So, but there are electricity charges there, as well as natural gas, probably water too, and sewerage. So, is it still just storage? And if so, why do we need all that?
Well, we need all that because it's a building that we have to keep a pumper truck in there, so we need to keep it heated.
Okay,
Because that
that
stores a
answered
pumper
that,
truck.
that's diesel.
That's the gas, and the electricity is that the we.
Well, again,
block-
right now, none of the lights work. So if we had to go inside the building and use, we gotta turn lights on. So again, it's not something that we use all the time, but we
Right.
need some electricity that when we go down there, we gotta turn lights on and get it to work and function.
Okay.
And the
And along
heaters,
with
the heaters use electricity,
Yep.
the blowers.
And then also the water sewer, there's a
Yeah.
bathroom in case somebody has to
Right.
use the facilities we've
Well,
made it.
the sewerage, yeah, the minute you put a bathroom in, you're gonna have a sewerage charge.
Yep, so that's what those
Okay.
costs are, yes.
I'm just making sure.
Absolutely.
because,
Yep, nope.
Like I said, it was, we were thinking of tearing it down
Right.
a couple of years ago.
Yeah, no, so we're using it to store our, reserve apparatus, so if an engine goes down, we'll go grab it from Station 3 and bring it back. But we need to make sure we maintain some heat. It's not at 75, 80, I can assure you that. But it's left at a reasonable temperature, probably around 50,
Yeah.
to make sure that the truck is, usable if we need to go get it and put it into service.
Okay, great, thanks.
Sure. Let's see. Education and training, I think that's what I talked about earlier. We made some adjustments, plus the National Registry EMT fees went up. So we had to figure out and calculate for that. And again, it wasn't an exorbitant amount, but, those costs went up this year, which they haven't in a very, very long time. So this is, unusual that they went up, but those costs went up. The next one that's kind of a big one that you see is 36,200 under Communications 8506. When the department went with the new radio system and the equipment was purchased, they purchased exactly what they needed. There was no extra. So there's no replacement, there's no, what do we use if something breaks? So this number that you see here is the start of us purchasing a couple of extra portable radios or a mobile radio. Should one break, we can put another one in its place. Right now, I don't have anything. So we thought we would just start small and see what we could do to start to improve that area. Because like you've learned, communications is a huge piece of our job. And that radio is their lifeline if they need to make a message. So I gotta give them the equipment and the tools, so that's what that 36,000 is for.
Those are expensive radios, aren't they?
Absolutely, the kind that we need to purchase. It's a dual band type radio, and then the fire service ruggedness of the radio, which it's the best radio that you could purchase for the firefighter, but unfortunately, it comes with a cost.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yep.
And they need them, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah, no, the town has done a great job supplying them with the tools that they need, but now we need to just kind of upkeep and maintain that. And if we can figure out a way to do that in little bites versus a huge chunk,
Yeah,
it would be much more palatable to do. Other than that, everything else was pretty much level funded, other than those items that I spoke about, that I saw that were increases that you might have questions on.
okay. Anybody, Andy?
Line 8280, general insurance. I just noticed that even from the 2021 actuals, which was 44K, last year budget was 46K, and this year it's 53K, a $7,500 jump. What has changed that's made that jump?
Our guaranteed maximum rate that we got from our insurance provider. That's why.
Just
an
a
increase in
provider
cost.
quote? You plug
Provider.
in the number and it is what it is?
It is what it is.
Okay.
We allocate based on a bunch of different formulas when the actuals come into play, but during budget, we have to assume.
You say you allocate, that's to each one of the departments? Kind of
Correct.
like you do the finance and everybody else, you
Yep,
allocate that out?
Every department, you're gonna see a charge for general insurance. That's based on last year's budget plus the guaranteed maximum.
Okay, thank you.
And there have been times when the guaranteed maximum has been way over what it actually came in at, but you can't expect that to
Not
happen.
normally.
So we have to start at this point with what they give us. Any other questions?
Just real quick, the Knox box, what do they call
Knox
it?
box.
The Knox box key security system.
Yes.
That's 8508? Yes, 8508. It's operating equipment. I was just curious what it was.
All right, so the Knox box system is you may have seen them on buildings. It's a box that's
Commercial.
usually got a, yep, that's the key box for us,
To get
that the
it.
building owner puts all the keys in for us to use the locks within the building instead of us using the master key that we may need to use It
Yeah.
saves on
Or the
damage.
battery ran out.
So we prefer them to put a Knox box up, so with our special key designed just for our town and our department, that we can access those keys for their facility to access the boiler room or the electrical room or whatever we need to get
Sure,
into
yeah.
to kind of investigate, why did the alarm go off? What are we doing here?
And what, is that something that's offset by revenues? Does the business pay for those?
Usually the business would pay for the box, and we already have the keys, so we might have to buy keys every now and then, but yeah, that's usually what that is.
Thanks, Chief.
But you have 4 in there. Is that replacements or additions for new businesses or something? or-
Probably, yeah, and I think we're also trying to figure out how we can make sure the town buildings have them as well.
Yep.
Because some of the town buildings don't, and so if we can kind of make it a universal system where we only need one key. Back in the day, we used to have a key book that had
Yeah.
tons of keys to
Yeah.
every building, and
And
they
you're
were
sitting there
stamped with what
fumbling
they
around
were.
trying to figure out how to.
So we're
yeah.
trying to eliminate the amount of keys that we're quote responsible for and have to remember where they all go. So it's a lot easier with a single key system versus
Does that
multiple
give you
keys.
access to these gates and stuff like that, like they have over near the outlet malls? How do you get through that gate?
To be honest, I don't know. I wish I did, but I don't. Again, I
Alright.
haven't had the chance to learn everything yet, so.
It's an aluminum gutter. You could easily drive through
I'm
it.
sure you could drive through it, but.
Sure.
They,
But-
sorry,
Go
Chief,
ahead.
but they do. They do have either an opener or something with it. And by the way, they have diamond plate bumpers that
That'll
if it
go
doesn't
right
go
through it,
up,
yeah.
they'll go right
Go
through
right
it, and
through it, I
then it'll be
understand.
on the outlet mall to
That's
fix.
an easy one.
But they do have, when they built it, they did give the fire department some kind of
Access to it.
access to it. It's like, I hate to say it, it's like the gate over by the school to get on the highway.
Yeah.
They have, looks like a garage door opener that they press and the gate goes up and they can get access to the highway. It's the same thing over with,
Okay.
with the outlet mall. They're supposed to.
Just get the firefighter out and just move.
All right.
Yeah, a
So it-
firefighter will find a way.
Bolt cutters.
Not even
That's
that.
the master key he was
Yeah,
thinking about.
just right through it. That thing's not gonna stop them at all, I'm sure, but I didn't know.
Yeah, no, it's a
Um,
downspout. It's
hopefully-
aluminum downspout.
Everybody else is stopped by it just because they don't want to scratch up their bumper. Any other questions on the fire budget?
No.
While the chief is here. That brings us to, what, code enforcement? Code enforcement.
It's all right, I can give you mine. But honestly, code enforcement is level funded. These are non-union people in the department. It's level funded. It went up about $7,000. And really, the biggest change is wages part-time, 8107. And the reason for that
We-
is that,
We've been inundated with inspections.
go ahead, chief.
It's crazy. So our staff came to us, and with all of these large projects, that takes a lot of man-hours to inspect one of those large projects. Well, when our staff is tied up with that, we have the regular Merrimack homeowner that needs something inspected or whatever. So we went to the town manager and said, geez, can we bring someone in part-time to help take care of these one-offs? Because our staff is really focusing on those big buildings, and, you know, we don't want to go back 3, 4, 5 dozen times if we can send the guy for a day. But then that means all of the other stuff gets delayed. So we found a way to bring in someone part-time to handle the small, you know, and take care of the Merrimack residents that need that boiler inspection or whatever it is that they need to get
So
accomplished.
is that line part-time inspector new then, or?
Yeah, that's new. That
Yeah.
would be new. It's, and really that is to cover the cost of a gentleman who retired, who knows the Merrimack system, who's willing to come back and give us 2 days a week to work. Because he does know the Merrimack system.
Yeah.
And all this gentleman does is come in, get a list of jobs to inspect and go and just, he's out the
Runs
door
through.
and inspects all day. If it takes him 5 hours, he comes back, I'm done. I'll see you Friday. If it takes him 8 to 10 hours, he works until the job is done. So, but he is a gentleman who's familiar with Merrimack and the building codes.
I
So
was
it's not
wondering
like we're
who
just
you were
picking
gonna
somebody.
get for $10,000 a year.
Let me tell you,
That's
he's
very
thrilled.
fortunate.
He's
Yeah.
thrilled to be
Yeah.
here. He's
Yeah.
excited. Just a great gentleman to have with
Yeah, what
us.
a
And,
deal.
And he sings to us.
yeah, he's just been a joy to have,
Yeah,
truly.
he's just happy to be here.
I
He really
had,
loves his
I
job.
had to have someone out, it was him, and the people who were doing the work said, oh, and they were so pleased to see him. Because he knew.
He's
what
very
he
well
was-
known,
He was
yes.
known what he, we thought he had retired, well, I have, but I
Yep.
do this, and they were just saying how much he knows. And he not only inspects, but he says, we've learned more things from this guy.
He's an educator. Absolutely. He teaches the programs and
He really
teaches
does.
people how to be a building official
Oh, no
or an
kidding.
electrical inspector.
So,
yeah,
this
so-
was electrical.
Yep.
And he had come out, and every time I speak to him, I learn something.
Yes.
So that was nice to hear.
Yeah, he's great to have, so we're very super lucky to have him.
Perfect.
Good. And you have a secretary in the code enforcement, and you also have a part-time admin clerk?
Yes. So again, just because of the way that the traffic flows in and out, the emails that these girls take on, and the phone calls that we get for all these inspections, and the wants that people have, it takes a lot of hours to make that work and function, so.
Including overtime hours.
Yeah, not very many. We try to keep that to a minimum, but if there's a project or a situation that does develop, they're more than happy to stay and finish it till we get to the end, so.
Okay, great. Any other questions on code enforcement? Seeing none. I think that clears your plate there.
I think so.
That wasn't too painful.
No, I appreciate the opportunity to explain what it is that we do and, answer your questions that you have, so that's how
And
this
that was a
works.
very good presentation. I belly ached a little bit. But
That
that was
was a good,
I
concise,
admit that.
clear.
Yeah.
But it
well,
was
and
very,
that's what I thought I
visually,
heard
it was very
that,
clear.
Yeah.
you wanted an overall general concept,
It was
so
very
that's what I
clear.
put together for you, so you'd have a concept. And I think
Did you
sometimes, again,
like
images
that?
mean something,
That was good too.
so
Yeah,
I
I
hope
thought you
that
did very
helped.
well with that.
Give
Thank
you a
you.
better understanding of what it is that we do.
Help me. I appreciate it.
Awesome.
It's always good to see you, Chief.
Thank you.
Be well, thank you.
Now we can pick on Paul.
As long as he doesn't fall out of his chair.
Yes. Ask
He's serious
Becky-
now.
Ask Becky to take a look at the video on her desktop and fall out of the chair. It's,
Sounds like a YouTube
he did, he's go, oh,
There's gonna be a lot of people wanting to talk when I retire, I gotta
oh, yeah, you can count. I'll be playing a loop behind you the whole evening.
That's it.
You're not planning that soon, are you?
No,
Figured I'd better ask.
no, I'm not planning on
And if he'd said yes, what would you have done?
I don't know. Should have told us that a while ago.
So, what I'd like to do real quick is, I have a little presentation here. Sorry. What I'd like to do real quick is I have a little presentation here. I'm sorry,
Is that you?
that's me going nuts here with,
Email.
no, I got a portable drive and
Oh,
I gotta set it back there so it doesn't move. I'd like to go to Department
bings at it.
27, Debt Services, and explain a couple of things. We have two bonds outstanding in the general fund. The highway bond and drainage bond improvements that we did back in 2007. The drainage bond, this will be the last year that we will be paying for that drainage bond.
2023?
Yes, and it will end 2022, 23 will be the last year. So that bond of $155,000 and $3,681, this will be the last year that we pay for it in 2022, 23. So that bond will be dropping off. And then we have the highway garage, which is still inactive bond for several years. And that payment is about, with interest, about $255,000. So those are the two current bonds we have. In wastewater, we also have a, if you turn to page 142, if Finley, it's still underneath your tab 27. You'll see that one of the bonds did drop off, and that was the dewatering bond. So that finishes as of June 30th this year. We, right now, only have one active SRF bond that we're paying on, and that is the Phase 2 compost and the building improvements that we did. We also have the one for Phase 3 4, 3 and 4. That will be coming due, but in the 22-23 year, we will not be seeing a payment for interest or principal, because with SRF funding, you have 1 year after substantial completion. The project probably will not be substantially complete until the fall of '22. So we'll be seeing that bond pick up in the '23-24 year. So we have 1 more year with only just the compost and the Phase 2 upgrade. So those are our current active bonds. Proposed issuance of debt.
And before you go on, the wastewater ones are paid for out of the wastewater funds.
Correct, 100%
and
out
not
of
off of the
user
tax
fees.
base.
That is right. 100% user fees.
Just always want to repeat that as often as we can so that people don't confuse. Because a lot of times people will say, well, we have 4 bonds going, we're over bonded right now. We need
Right.
to pay some of this off before we can do anything else.
Right. So,
And no, only 2 of them are sitting on the tax base,
tax,
and
yes.
one of those finishes this year,
Yep, yes, and this year's budget. What?
this budget year.
Was the garage 20 years?
Believe we took out a 20-year bond on the garage. So what I'm proposing is, we talked about it last Thursday, a fire truck. So this is the 5-year fire repayment schedule for a fire truck over 5 years. Roughly, it's about 6 to 7 cents on the tax rate. The interest that came out was a little bit higher than what we were projecting with the initial that we talked about Thursday. We double-checked with the bond bank on their sale, and they are projecting about, for a 5-year, about 1.75 interest. The total cost would be $1,578,750. I was asked to look at a 10-year, and the 10-year is basically 4 cents, 3 to 4 cents on the tax rate for those years. Total payments is $1,665,000. Looking at a 10-year, it's going to be, we're projecting about a 22% tax rate. So, useful life of the fire ladder truck,
Wait, sorry, say that statement again?
a 2% interest rate.
Oh, I thought I heard you say 22%.
No, 2%, sorry. It's the mask.
I've never seen you move so fast.
It's the mask. I'll blame the mask. Useful life on the ladder truck is a 20-plus year. Option 1 cost, like I said, is $1,578,750. Option 2 cost, which is the 10-year bond, is $1,665,000. Difference is $86,250 worth of interest.
Yeah, but what's the difference in the annual expense?
It's a
4 to 8
it's a difference.
4 to 8
cents.
Well, no, I understand that, but in dollars per year of how much we'd have to spend, we'd have to add to the budget. I realize it's only,
Well, it'd be $326,000 for a 5-year bond. So you take the 13,125 twice and the 300, so you'd add, it would be 326, 320, it'll go down, but the
start at
first year,
326, yeah.
326 for a 5-year bond, and in a
It's 180.
180, so it's almost in half. Well, not 1/2, but,
Well, it's a little more than in half, but
Yeah.
it's still a significant amount.
right, it's actually 3 cents on the tax rate, which is about $150,000. So,
So the 10 years, 3 cents, and how much would the 5?
6 to 7 cents,
Okay,
and then
all
3 to
right.
4 cents.
That's double.
And how much more did it cost to go with the 10-year?
It only costs
$86,000?
$86,250 over the 10 years.
$8,600 a year,
Over the-
divided over 10 years.
Yeah,
And those tax
And you
rates,
save 150 in what you have to raise at that point in time.
right.
I,
the first year.
I don't know how to balance it out, but it seems to me like there's a good chance that you could, looking at the future cost of money and you, looking at how much we'd have to raise in taxes and stuff, that we ought to consider the 10-year just because of reducing the overall amount we're gonna have to raise each year to pay that bond by well over the amount that it's costing us to go there. I mean, yeah, if you look at it as a lump sum, at the end of 10 years, you've spent an 86,000 more, but that's only $8,600 per year, and you've saved 150 or 140 or something like that in amounts you have to raise in taxes for each of those years, and, well, for 5 of those years.
Well,
You
I
paid
also.
more the other years, so.
I also looked at the tax, I didn't include it in the slide, but I did the math, being a math kind of guy, and it was like 36 cents over the 5 years versus 34 cents, or 36 cents over the 10 years versus 34 cents over the 5 years in tax rate. So even that, you know, is pretty comparable with the 86,000, that's your 2-cent difference of the 36 versus 34. So we're not blowing out, to your point, it's not costing us any more, whether we get it done in 5 years or we get it done in 10 years. Yes, it's costing us 2 cents more over those 10 years on total, what we would have to raise for taxes. I'm more concerned, honestly, I brought these 2 options for the council tonight. I was more concerned of bringing this forward to see if this is something that you would like to be brought forward further. And we can look at the 10 and crafting the warrant article for this ladder truck bond. Did that make sense?
Do that again.
Are you suggesting whether we should even go for it at all first?
Well, yes, is the council in favor of doing this
Personally, I don't
bond?
think we have an option.
Okay, well, I'm
So
just
that's my
trying to,
opinion.
Okay.
To bond or not bond, is that what you?
No, to
Well, I
buy or
have no
not
question we
buy.
have to,
Oh, to buy or not buy?
to buy.
Well, I mean, I feel like I've been
Bonding,
trapped
it
in a
has to be
corner
done
with
by
that.
bonding.
Yeah,
'cause
I think that's
there's
what
no
she's saying.
way, but it's just a matter of how we do it.
Right.
5, 10, whatever.
right, and,
So the
I-
consensus, you need the consensus
right,
that we're even gonna go for it first,
right,
and then we go into the details.
yes.
Okay.
Who had a question?
Yeah.
Barbara?
No, me. No, I agree. We have no option. We have a ladder truck that's
20 years old.
is spending more time in the shop than it is in the firehouse, and every time they go to use it, something goes wrong. So I think before we're at a rock and a hard place where we don't have a ladder truck at all, we need to move on it.
Okay, no, I didn't
So-
want to assume.
So you have that,
Well,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're not assuming, 10 or 15 years ago, one could make a real argument about whether we needed a ladder truck in this town
That's right.
or not. I don't think we can do that anymore. I think we've kind of worked our way into a corner, and we have to have a ladder truck, and we'll have a lot of people tell us that. I guess the question or the concern is getting a bond article passed. I mean, and that's what we have to try and figure out how we're gonna present, if we go that way. Andy?
So I want to make sure I understand. So we're saying we have a bond roughly that we're paying 155K a year that we're about to pay off.
Yes.
And now we're discussing whether 2 options, we're gonna basically replace that bond with either a 10-year bond that would cost us 180K a year, or a 5-year bond that would cost us 326K a year.
Correct.
So really, if we went with the 10-year option, we're
Just flipping.
raising our debt payment 25K a year
Right.
is basically the change we would be making.
Right.
And there's no point where we would be paying both of these bonds at the same time. One would be done before the other would kick in.
The only thing we would pay is the interest, the first year interest,
Okay,
because we would definitely go out right away in the July timeframe, so we'd have to pay the January interest.
But that was a
Which is what we got.
relatively small number?
Yeah, $13,000.
Oh, okay.
But could this be, with the jump that will be happening in a
15,
few years
15.
because of our, the safe money, whatever.
Safer grant?
Safer grant, might it be better to
Get it over.
use that portion for the next 3 years to kind of do our offset along with the other plans that you spoke of earlier? And then we'd have the overlap of 2 years at the end, but it'd be done with.
Yes, but just know that in year 3, the full 900 or 860 something $1,000 would be put on the tax rate at that point.
Right.
Because if you're using that money to offset the safer, so you would have to bring in a significant amount of money to do that.
I truly didn't understand what you said. You wanted
I didn't know
to
if we,
consider.
that offset, that,
Right, the
because
safer
we're gonna
grant.
be, people, the whole idea is to ease them into it. We're still spending the money, more than we otherwise would have. So it's not free for the next three, but by easing into it, it'll soften the blow in
We'd
3
have the,
years.
we'd have the delta in years 4 and 5 of the bond. So
Right.
we have, like Councilor Hunter said, we have $155,000 for round numbers. If we do a 5-year, we're looking at, say, 320,000.
Right.
So, say 160, let's call it 160 for round numbers, 160,000 for debt payment. And in this, I'm saying on average, we're gonna have 320. So we'd still have $160,000 that we'd increase the tax rate on
For 2 years.
for 2 years. And then, but in years 3 and 4, it'd still be that 160, but we wouldn't have that money to help offset the cost of the SAFER grant when it comes out. Because we'd still have 2 years of bond payments. Honestly, looking at the 10-year would be my recommendation to the council. I know we were looking at 5, but looking at the 10-year, it replaces the debt that we have right now.
Yeah.
Also, looking in the future, if I had a crystal ball of what other bonds might be coming up for the town in the next 2 to 3 years. In the general fund, I only see one, and that would be a safety complex bond. That would be the only other bond that I see going forward. We are still well under our debt limit for the town. So it wouldn't be an issue on that. But I think the ladder truck is a need. We all have said that. It's not a want, it's a need. But I would recommend the 10-year, and basically it would not affect the tax rate going forward in years 23, 24 for the next 10 years, because we already have that money accounted for in the tax rate this year.
Barbara, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I can see some pushback coming based on the fact that with all the development happening in town, now we have 4 and 5-story buildings. And if that hadn't been approved, we wouldn't need a ladder truck. But on the other hand, a lot of those buildings should start to mature and be filled in another year, 2 years. So are we expecting enough revenue from a tax base off of those properties? Because we just looked at another one for One Innovation Way last night.
As you'll know, as you noted, as I noted in my budget presentation, I've used $100 million, I believe, number of new construction. So some of that is involved in this number.
Barbara, remember, 70% of that goes to the schools.
Yeah, but it's.
Yeah, I know, but it's
some.
still.
I agree.
It's
But people are
still.
going, okay, we have 100,000, we're gonna get this.
Yeah.
And people just have this
Right.
perception of, oh, look at this.
Yeah.
Right.
Only 30%, or whatever it is,
Yeah,
20 some odd
22,
percent.
23% comes.
23% comes to the town, so we have to keep it in perspective, that's all.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But to answer your question, some of those buildings that are being constructed right now, as of April 1st, we're bringing in another $100 million. And as they keep on building the new construction, we've had hearings like in front of the planning board for a couple more apartments in the north end of town. And then you said One Innovation Way, and then you have the other one near the Outlets Executive Park. So all those will increase the
Will
tax
increase the
rate
tax
to lower,
base, yeah.
to lower the overall rate. But my suggestion would be to go with the 10-year bond.
I would agree. I think that it allows you to pay for it while you're using it. It reduces the increase a little bit without being too dramatic as far as the overall cost is concerned. We're only talking 0.25% interest rate.
Right.
Um,
And Thursday, when we came forward, we wanted to show you what the lease, 4-year lease was versus a 5-year bond. And it really didn't make sense to lease at that time. It made more sense to bond it. Both, either whether we lease it or bonded it, we'd still would have to go out for people, the residents, to vote yea or nay. One good thing is now bonds are at 60%, so you don't no longer need the supermajority. There was legislation passed a couple years ago that say bonds are now 60% to pass. This would be similar, once we go forward and have the public hearing on the 10th of February with the budget. This will be one of the items we talk about. But what I would suggest, and it's on me, is kind of to go out and talk to the Rotary Club, go out and talk to the Lions Club, go out and talk to the senior centers, like we've done in the past on some of the wastewater bonds, to let them know why this is happening and how much it is and how it's gonna affect the groups, and do a TV show. And I'm
Yep.
sure I can get the fire chief in here to give his presentation again on a TV show, and have, the finance director explain the bonding and everything else. So,
To be honest with you, I don't think there's gonna be much resistance to it.
I agree.
I really don't. Especially with the flipping, basically. The flipping of dropping
Oh,
a
dropping one off and
bond,
running
and-
it.
which is what we talked about with the wastewater as well. But just in general, I think the town's very supportive of fire departments and police departments, so,
I agree, and I think, I didn't mean to jump on Lon.
sorry.
Lon, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I'm with the consensus that we need this. I don't recall the town going backwards since I've been a resident in terms of knowing where we are and what the needs are. We've had the ladder truck for 20 years.
Yep.
We've built a town that says you can't wait on Bedford, which is only across the line, to keep our residents safe. The 10-year bond plan, what does it add? How long does it take us to get ready to put it on the warrant? Is it going on this coming warrant, 22, 23?
It could go, yes, that's my plan, is to bring it forward and put it on the warrant and try in April to have a vote on the bond for the ladder truck, yes. So it's going on
And
this
the
year.
impact on this, on 22, 23's tax rate?
It's less than a penny because it's only that interest of $15,000. So it would be less than a penny.
That 1 year.
No, for that,
For that first
for
year.
the first 6 months of interest.
But then after that, it would be.
Then after that, it will be between 3 and 4 cents.
180.
But we're also taking off a bond payment, which is around
Right.
3 cents. So it's gonna be a break even going forward. It's not gonna increase the tax rate.
Do we have a motion ready?
Do you need a motion?
I don't think we need a motion right now. It's part of the budget discussion, and I'm just trying to give everybody, proper discussion on this.
Thank you.
Bentley.
And I agree with Nancy. I think it will be obvious to people that with the apartment buildings, specifically at Exit 10, it's a necessity now. And then in the marketing of the whole thing, pointing out the flaws with the current one and the maintenance costs and the overall age. I thought it was closer to 22 years old, but I think it'll be something that the town recognizes the need.
And once again, the reason why we're not doing this out of the capital reserve fund is because we expended the capital reserve funds for the 2 pumper trucks. And the discussions that we were having at the time was, we don't need a ladder truck, so we weren't saving to replace the ladder truck. And then by the time we got to say, we need the ladder truck, it's cheaper to go out to bond it right now instead of waiting another 5 years to save up that much more money in the capital reserve, or 10 years. So that's why we're going out to bond it, and that's why we're asking for the bond, is because of the need of the ladder truck.
Right. Well, in 2044, when all these things
I
have
won't
to
be
be
here.
replaced, it's gonna be a nightmare for whomever's here.
I'll be watching.
So,
Well, that's why the town does capital reserve funds, because
Oh, no, true.
they can plan out, they'll have 10 years when this bond is paid off, they can still
To
be
still
saving
be
up for the
planning.
replacement.
and now it's in the, and now it's in the cycle, just like those engines are now in the.
That's what I mean,
the
all three will
cycle.
be coming due in
Right.
2022
But
years.
don't forget, when we did the 2 engines, we did a new capital improvement plan that looked out 10, 15 years. And the council raised the amount of
Yep.
money going into that capital reserve fund to help with those purchases going forward. And so we're trying to get these items, and we're trying now to really budget for these items on a more general basis going forward, so that the next time in 44, this will come out of hopefully a capital reserve fund, and I don't think I'll be here in 44 either. So, I'll just say that right now.
I'm gonna retire by that time, believe me.
So, thank you.
May
I-
take
I
me
got-
that long.
I got my marching orders for the ladder truck. The other bond that I would like to discuss is the Phase 5 wastewater. You heard Sarita come through and talk about the wastewater Phase 5. So what I wanted to show you is, I wanted to show you a couple options here. If we do a 20-year option on a bond, I'm estimating the interest rate to be 2.55%. It's gonna cost 10 million, almost $10.3 million over those 20 years of cost for the $8 million, 102,750 that would be asking for. Then I looked at a 25-year bond, and the interest rate's 2.8%, and that's gonna cost us almost $11 million. My recommendation would be, once again, use the FRS option. They are usually a half to 3/4 to a percentage less than what we can get on the open market on a bond rate. If we did the same 20-year bond using SRF, it's gonna cost us around $10 million. So the difference is between 10.3 million and $10 million. So we'd save $300,000 over the 20 years. SRF gives us other options as well. If the state ever institutes a 20% match on payments and bond payments, this could be eligible for that, versus if we went with a straight bond, it might not be. So my recommendation would be go with the SRF option when, if, I'm sorry, this.
Is that
thing
you?
That's me, it's my,
Yeah,
it's going
that's
nuts. Sorry about that. So if the council so desires to move the project forward, my recommendation would be to go with the 20-year SRF bond. They're not gonna give us any more than 20 years. They gave us 30 years on Phase 4 and Phase 3. They're not gonna give us 30 years on this next phase.
Can you explain SRF?
State revolving fund. Basically, what happens is that it's a grant that comes in, there's a pot of money for water, sewer, infrastructure upgrades, and you're allowed to apply for it, and you pay a 1% administration fee, and then you pay an interest rate. The interest rate is set by a committee. It's a state-run organization, so the interest rate is set by a committee. And one more time.
Is that Facebook?
It, yeah, thank you. So it's
got a hammer
state
on
by,
it. Here,
it's
I
set
got
by
a
the
hammer.
state, and the interest rate set by the state. We pay back into the fund, and as the fund grows, because what they do is the interest, so they get their principal money back, and then they charge interest, so they can start doing more and more loans. That's what the state revolving fund is.
Thank you.
And no, we cannot use it for the ladder truck. I know that will be a question.
It pumps water, doesn't it?
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
come
I
on.
know that would be a question, but no, this is for water and sewer infrastructure.
So what does that do to the sewer usage fee?
Sewer usage fee, as we said on Thursday, would not change. It'd still be what we're projecting, a 12% increase and I think it's a 5. And then those, and then going out, we're doing the rate study right now. But looking at it, I think we'd be, we're not going to change what we're projecting going forward. And we'd still be one of the lowest in the state. I don't even think we're making it up
Which
to the
doesn't
halfway
change, so
point.
sounds like a great idea, and the 20-year SRF plan sounds great to me. Does anybody else have any comments or suggestions?
Well, I think the whole idea of being eligible for, if anything happens to come up in
Yeah.
the state,
Yeah.
we're still eligible with this, I think that's a major.
Right,
Major
That's a good point,
advantage.
yeah.
right. And I don't know what they would do because they're using ARPA money, but usually we have several projects that were on the list and they fund so much. And, we had a project that we're almost done paying the bond. We actually paid off the bond and we can't pay you all cash in one payment. We'll pay it over 3 years. And we were done paying the bond. So it hit the number. We made the magic cut line and they gave us our money. So it's a good program to be in with wastewater.
Okay.
Okay?
Barbara?
So I just want to clarify what you were saying, Nancy. So with all of the infrastructure work coming through, money coming through from the federal government, depending on the stipulations for that money, we may still be able to qualify for that.
Yeah,
Depending on
right
what
now,
it is.
Right now, we're qualified for a $2 million bond on this. $2 million principal offset. So the bond really, what we'll be going out for is almost $10,102,000. We backed out the $2 million to show you this is what we're looking for.
Okay.
So we're getting the $2 million grant from the state.
Okay,
Okay?
so that sounds positive.
Yes, it is.
Okay, well, anything else that you need on this subject, or?
Not on this subject,
Okay,
but I'm going to stay here
you're still
because
busy.
we got two more topics to discuss. The first one is Fund 33, Fire Protection. And this is a fee that is paid by this is a fee that is paid by the taxpayers in this district. Over off of out towards the Pennachuck Waterworks in the area of the Y in that area over there off of Manchester Street, we have what we call as a water district, and they pay for hydrants. And this is the hydrant charge for fire protection from Pennachuck Waterworks. And this is a fee that those residents over there pay on top of their taxes. And it could be 30 cents more per thousand based on the fee because of how we look into it. And there is a value based on like everything else, we have a value for the town. There's a value for this water district. And those water users in that fire district in that area pay for having fire protection from Pennachuck. Pennachuck builds the town monthly, and we pay them. This has been going on for 20 plus years through their tax bill. When we do it, in that area, there's a special fire protection fee charge that they see on their tax bill. And that is for the fire protection that we pay to Pennachuck to provide us the water if there's a fire in that area, to put out the fire.
So the rest of the residents of Merrimack do not get that?
They do
But
not.
because we're on MVD.
We're on MVD.
Where those people who are hooked up to Pennachuck, every single resident home would have that fee, additional fee on their property.
Where Pennachuck has a fire protection area in that area, where if they're being served by that fire protection area, they would get that fee. So, for instance, somebody on Wire Road would not pay that fee.
Gotcha.
It's out off of Manchester Street and the Bowers
Bowers Landing,
Bowers
and
Landing.
Innovation Way, and
Yeah,
all of
Innovation
that
Ways,
stuff.
all those guys, that they would be paying that. And usually it's been pretty consistent. It's been around at 88,000, 93, 96. It's been going up steadily, 99. We're projecting 102 for this year that we're in, and then 107. So it's a $5,000 increase, and that's based on Pennachuck saying our water rates are gonna go up X percent. And that's how we budget for this, and it's
And this isn't water use, this is just to kind of a
fire protection.
protection, the fact that it's there and
Yeah,
available.
exactly. That's it.
Isn't it, if you have a well, you're not on town water, but you live outside of this district, there's still a hydrant fee, is there not, that you're assessed by MVD?
No,
Because I think my son's outside of this district, but he pays a fee to MVD and he doesn't
We have
have.
an MVD person right here, yes.
I didn't know if everybody, if you're on town water, you have the hydrant fee in there, isn't it?
Yes, that is
In
correct.
water
If you're
bill.
within, I believe it's 300 feet of a hydrant, you're paying a hydrant fee.
so to MVD, but if you're
To
on a
the
well,
MVD To the MVD,
But if you're on a well line, do you still pay that?
doesn't matter.
Right,
Yes.
so-
but if you're outside, so there's people on wells in the Babuzik Lake area that are more than 300 feet from the hydrant, they do not pay the fee. But if you're on Tomahawk Drive, for instance, you might pay that fee because you might be
Okay.
300, because the hydrant basically sits right on the corner near Tomahawk Drive, so.
You'd be in it.
Yeah, but not all well owners pay MVD for the hydrant fee,
Okay,
is what I was trying to say,
all right. It wasn't important for tonight anyhow, it just,
so.
one
But
of those things that
I
kinda
just
help.
wanted to
But
go over this
obviously-
because
Obviously, the people in this fire protection are not paying MVD, they're
They're-
paying Pennachuck.
they're paying the
effectively.
town to pay,
But we're
to
paying
pay
Pennachuck
Pennachuck.
for the
And
same
this is
thing.
100% offset, but we have to include it in our budget, once again, because of gross budgeting.
Right.
Okay? But I wanted to bring that forward. We haven't talked about that in a couple of years, so I wanted to bring, that's why I wanted to bring it forward. The last topic I want to talk about, well, I have two topics I want to talk about,
Don't lie.
is capital reserve fund.
No.
And what we're looking at is the capital reserve fund and the funding of the capital reserve funds. We have several capital reserve funds that we fund every year. In general fund, we're looking at 1 million, actually just over 2,2,500 for general fund. And then the operating budget for sewer is it's 500,000, not 550 is what I'm looking at funding for the capital reserve fund for sewer. So all in total, the operating budget for capital reserve funds to include general fund and sewer fund is $2,552,500. That's an increase of roughly, I don't have the increase here, but I do have the increase here. Stop. So some of the increases are $2,500 for revaluation, going from 15,000 to 17,500. $15,000 capital reserve fund for
Fire equipment.
ambulance, going from 100 to $115,000. $30,000 capital reserve increase, and that is for road infrastructure, going from 545,000. Sorry, $130,000 increase in capital reserve funds. For highways, getting $25,000 of that. Road infrastructure, I'm looking at $105,000 increase for a total of $130,000. Solid waste is a decrease of $25,000. We're going from 125 to 100,000. So the difference is 200 and, hold on,
22.5,
yeah,
roughly.
roughly. 122,500. An increase in capital reserve funds, deposits. And that's really to pay for increased costs of some of our projects that are coming to fruition and the increased costs associated with it, especially in the road capital reserve fund, road infrastructure capital reserve fund, we're seeing the price of materials for bridges and, with the infrastructure money. So we're looking at increasing that a little bit. And then, of course, the highway equipment, we saw increases when they came forward, just in the, what it costs for a 6-wheel dump truck and a 10-wheel dump truck now is a lot more than what it cost just a year ago. So that's why those are, the majority of the increase is $130,000 there. And with the $25,000 decrease in solid waste, because we have a lot of new equipment. We've bought the 4 trailers, we have a new tractor, we bought a loader, we bought a Bobcat, we bought a forklift, so we have bought a lot of equipment there in solid waste, so we figured that we could decrease that, so. But that's that. The tax rate for capital reserve funds basically stays flat. And it's a 40-cent on the tax rate. So 40 cents of the tax rate goes towards capital reserve funds. And I could show you that in a second. So that's what it would look like, the difference. So the $500,000 estimated revenue, that's coming from the sewer fund, which is 100% offset by user fees. So that would be the property tax levy, 40 cents. So the one thing that I'd like to talk a little bit about here is I was asked to about a new building capital reserve fund. We've talked a little bit about this. I was asked, and this is my wording that I've put together. It hasn't been reviewed by council. What I did was I took several capital reserve funds that we've had over the years and wrote this up. But basically it says, shall the town vote to establish in accordance with RSA 35. RSA 35 is what is Gardner or what you have to do with capital reserve funds. That's the RSA that governs capital reserve funds. With RSA 35, a municipal building capital reserve fund. This fund shall be used to purchase or construct, including engineering and design, of major capital additions, replacements, improvements, and repairs or upgrades to any Merrimack municipal building, and to raise and appropriate the sum. I threw $50,000 in there to be placed in said fund and designate the town councils as agents to expend. This is a special warrant article per RSA 32:3(6). So the $50,000 is just a number that I put in there. That number can change, but we should, if you're gonna do a new capital reserve fund for the municipal buildings and repairs, you need to put some amount of money to get the fund started. If this is something the council would like to see going forward, I know we talked about this the other day, but this is part of, capital reserves. And like I said, I stole language from other capital reserve funds that basically talk about building and repairs that we already had established for other items.
Nancy?
Why do you have the term purchase in there? Because my understanding or my proposal had to do with maintenance or renovations.
I could take the
That's
word.
my thought. Now, if there's a reason, help me understand it.
Like I said, I took this from several different capital reserve funds that we have already had established.
Because
and
if it
that
was
was
a
some of
matter
the
of
language.
purchasing, that's different.
Well, but he also has replacement, improvements, and repair or upgrade.
I understand, but
Okay.
that's not purchasing.
Right.
Purchasing is something new.
No,
I think like
he's just lumping it all
Yeah.
together.
Oh, I understand, and what I'm suggesting is,
Take the purchase out.
I just
Well-
don't think purchase fits into the perception that I was thinking about. Now, I may be wrong, and that's what I'm asking for clarification.
And like I said, I garnered a bunch of different capital
Gotcha.
reserve. It gives us a little more flexibility. For instance, if we had this fund established and we had $742,000 in it, we could have purchased the communication building that we have to buy. We could have done it here We could have purchased the building and put it on the grounds, because that's what the $742,000 for that communication upgrade in the budget is for us to build a building to house our communication equipment at the Parker Tower.
But that's not a maintenance, well, I understand what you're saying now. It's
That's,
still separated,
yeah.
Lon?
Yeah, I don't know if it'll help you out or not, Nancy, but in the past, we've considered purchasing existing buildings for use for the town. The
Like the
Pearson
police
Building, and at one point, at least we were considering purchasing what is now the building across Continental Boulevard from our neighborhood. So that doesn't bother me, that he's put purchase in there.
That just,
I
it
do
just
think you
changes-
need, of any Merrimack municipal building, just a
Okay.
wordsmith.
I guess it just changes my intention.
Right.
If the
And
group
we-
wants to go with this, that's fine, but as a resident, I see the word purchase and I'm thinking that's different versus funds to maintain what we already have, not buying something new. So that was my intention. If the group decides differently, that's fine. That's why purchase jumped up for me.
Lon?
Do we need a motion to go beyond 10?
Yes.
Or consensus?
So moved
Yes.
to go beyond 10. It won't be long, though.
So we have a motion and a second by Nancy and by Barbara to,
Nancy.
Nancy Harrington
Nancy squared.
and Nancy Murphy to second it. Sorry, I heard a voice that direction. To extend our meeting beyond 10 o'clock. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? That passes 7-0-0. You got 5 more minutes. No,
I'm done.
I thought you might be.
You know, I'm just,
Maybe the attorneys need to give us some feedback.
you know, like I said, I've taken this from the
I
waste,
understand.
basically I stole
It's
it from the
initial.
wastewater treatment plant, and we use this as part of their sewer infrastructure capital reserve, and I just took the language and plopped it in and put in Merrimack municipal buildings. What I could do is, if this is something the council is interested in pursuing some more, I can definitely reach out to the attorneys and say, I need, you know, this is what they're trying to do, does this work? And if we have to take the word purchase out, it's just be construct, including engineer and design of major capital additions, replacements, improvements, and repairs or upgrades of any of the Merrimack municipal buildings.
So I need to have a better understanding of why we think we need to do this. We've been paying for things to repairs and maintenance out of the budget for years now. And people, I guess in their tax rate are paying for those things and getting the benefits of those. If we start building up a capital reserve fund, I have 2 qualms here. One, we're putting forth a higher budget and we're putting forth requests for bonding for things like the ladder truck, and the wastewater treatment plant. And so people are being faced with quite a few things, and this is gonna be yet another one that's gonna ask for an additional $50,000 or 1.5 or 2 cents on the tax rate, just to go into a bank account, to have no direct feedback or benefit to the taxpayer for having spent that money. Granted, it's a savings account. Sometime in the future, they get to save, but those people that move out of town in the meantime have paid for it, but are not gonna receive any benefit for it. And so I'm not sure. I think a new capital reserve fund at this time, there may never be a good time, but at this time would be appropriate. That's my opinion.
Well, I just want to bring up, the reason this originally came up had to do with the replacement of the trailer at the transfer station. And that being a certain amount that we all sort of, it was $95,000. And yet we are in dire need of a new whatever there. And the reason we're not doing is because that's large amount of money on top of what we're doing. And so my thought was, why don't we have a savings account for things like this? So we don't have to put a 95,000 in it. And think of all the municipal buildings we have. Whether it be, let's say we don't do the safety complex. The police station's gonna need upgrading. The fire station's gonna, and so in the future, instead of something to purchase, whether it be property or land, whatever, it was just my perception, why don't we start saving for those eventualities that are going to happen? Because I don't want to be in the position of like the fire truck. You know, all of a sudden, the trailer, and we don't have a choice. We have to do $100,000. If we had been saving a little bit, and I'm not talking massive amount of money, but if we've been saving a little bit, if we have these kind of eventualities come up, we have a source for it, that's all. So that was my thought. And whatever the group decides, I'm happy with. It was just a thought that I thought was worthy of discussion.
I don't have a problem with discussing
Right,
it.
right.
Any other thoughts? Should we ask Paul to go forward with further information on this, or do we think it's appropriate at this time?
For me, actually, I'm leaning against it for no real solid reason except for the penny
Other
or so on the tax
Other
rate.
things?
It's been pointed out by Paul that the revenues that the unspent appropriations and went back to offset the tax rate by the school district last year of $8 million is gonna come back in a big way, because we don't have those revenues likely to offset taxes this coming year, and so there's gonna be potentially $1 in the tax rate automatically.
Just schools?
Yeah, so with that in the back of my mind, this potential 50,000 or whatever would be decided upon might be something to wait on.
To wait another year?
Yeah, because I think when it's something like the $700,000, because I wasn't even thinking about that when this started. I was thinking more the safety complex, and I just, for something that would be like that, I'd rather not do this. I'd rather be able to have the funds for potential engineering maybe on the side, so you can prep and get the wheels in motion, if you will. But as far as any funding of anything like that, it would be bonded anyhow. So to try and save for it is something that I wouldn't want to do. But but that's why for now on this one in particular, I'd rather, I think, wait just till I can see how numbers are going to be falling into place.
Barbara?
Paul, where are we now for the tax rate before we start cutting? We started off at 23 cents, 16 of which was on the communications.
Right, we're still at total tax rate to include capital reserve funds is 20 cents increase,
20 cents.
20 cents total.
Does that but that doesn't include what we just discussed, potential bonds, does it?
No.
That's just budget.
That's just what was proposed. The potential bond won't be taking effect until the other bond comes off, so that's in
It's future.
23, 24.
Because the bond would be a warrant article, remember?
Right.
But the
And
bond
phase-
payment, the first bond payment wouldn't be due until 23, 24. We're talking about 22, 23's budgets. So the only thing that would increase is go up by 15, the number of 36,994, 495 would go up by $15,000 if the bond passed
For the next year.
Yep.
for the next year. Okay?
Just that first interest
So
payment.
just that first
Yeah.
interest payment.
Okay. Any other questions?
So
Any
it
other
sounds
comments?
sounds like we're gonna wait,
That's
which is fine. I do understand your rationale.
Yeah.
But again, I was just responding to our,
No, you're right.
I just feel bad.
It is.
I mean,
it's
we're
a-
already talking about increasing the capital reserve funds by 222K this year.
Yeah, but that,
From
none
what
of
it
that
was
takes
last
care of
year.
buildings.
I understand that, but it's just additional money that's gonna be raised through taxes
I understand.
and put into savings accounts. And if you wanna put another 50K into a savings account, then, or 25, or 10, or, I mean, pick a number, any number, but You know, as soon as you start to put a capital reserve fund out there, that's gonna set a certain flag in people's minds.
Perhaps. I do understand, and you may be right, but from the positions that we're in, we also, and that's why capital reserves funds started in the very beginning anyway, to be able to put ourselves in a position that we are in, that when there are occurrences that we have to spend for a couple of fire engine trucks, that we have the money. So I think the
I
argument.
understand that.
And philosophically, you can get into a debate about capital reserve funds versus bonding and all that kind of stuff, which is a whole separate issue. But I was just trying to establish something that would provide resources to fix the buildings that are within the town. And it can be for next year. I'm not sure it's immediate, but I think it's something we need to really consider,
I
that's all.
absolutely agree with you.
Yeah.
That we definitely need to consider it. Lon?
Yeah, this is thinking way outside the envelope, but perhaps we could change the language of an existing capital reserve fund to include your goal.
Already existing one? Now, that's not way out, that's pretty good line. That's something you could think about, Paul.
I don't mean it that way. Yeah, I'm just going through the capital reserve fund.
It's worth thinking about. What did I just find out? No, I think it's worth looking into, Lonnie.
I would have to look into it. I don't know if any would match, be able to be. I
Let's
know we
look
have a
into it.
land bank one that talks about purchasing land.
We have a library building maintenance.
That's separate, that's
Can't touch it, huh?
library trustees. Now, you
Right.
could do a change of that, and that's a 67% vote to change any
Right,
capital reserve
right.
fund.
Oh, is it?
Yes, you need a supermajority to change a capital reserve fund, meet definition. Only a majority to put one in place, but if you're gonna change it, you need a supermajority. And that's,
It was initially put in place with one thought.
One
If
thought.
You're overriding that thought.
exactly.
It's worth thinking about, though.
But I can think
You
about it,
never know.
and if there is, there is. I'll let everybody know, so.
Land bank would probably be the best one. Either that or add it to road infrastructure as part of the town infrastructure.
Road infrastructure right now has bridges, sidewalks, bike paths, a bunch of things that,
They don't want to share that.
and drainage. I would see the money going out more than for buildings.
Okay. Was somebody banging over there, or? All right, do we have anything else to discuss on the budget? When is our next meeting?
I had a snow date scheduled for tomorrow. Personally, we did not post anything for a meeting tomorrow.
Right.
So,
Won't be tomorrow.
so it won't be tomorrow. But we do need to reconvene and start discussing how we want to proceed and what we want to bring forward on the warrant itself for the public hearing on February 10th.
So it looks like January 26th is also a snow date to finalize and recommend the operating budget and special warrant articles. Thank you. January 26th is also a snow date that we have listed to finalize and recommend the operating budget and special warrant articles as necessary, which would be Wednesday of next week, right?
Right,
And
and
then
that-
we have a council meeting on Thursday.
Right. I would recommend doing it outside of a council meeting
Yes, I do too.
because we tried that one year and the council meeting lasted way too late. So.
Way past 10 o'clock.
Yeah, way past 10 o'clock. But I would recommend next Wednesday to start the budget deliberations. What I would ask is that if any counselor has any request because there's a lot of calculations that go in if there's a salary position or things of that sort, please send it to me so we can actually have the numbers ready, one way or the other. This happened years ago where it was, we're gonna, $25,000 in associated costs, so we didn't know what the associated cost at that time was, but if we had it in advance, we could at least calculate the total. If there's any questions when you're going through the budget this weekend, because I know you're all gonna, be diligent and look at it this
Oh,
weekend.
I'm sure.
And if you have any questions or you go through and you say, oh, wait a second, send me the question, I'll get it answered for you by the meeting, by the department. So if you have any questions, please bring that forward and ask.
You are still negotiating with 2 unions, is that right?
Yes, I am. I have one union that I am currently in process of negotiating. I have another union that I will be bringing forward to you on the 27th to discuss. I have my first tentative agreement as a town manager, one of the unions, so I did get one. I'm in the middle of negotiating with the second union, and hopefully they'll be wrapped up. They have to be wrapped up by February 8th. That's the last date that we
That
can.
was gonna be my question, yeah.
Yeah, but just so everybody knows, we're probably gonna have to have a special meeting on February 8th to ratify the 2 union contracts. That's the last day that the town council can ratify a union contract.
And our public hearing on the budget is the 10th?
The 10th,
Okay,
right?
and, non-union wage numbers?
I
Are you gonna
will,
recommend something when?
after I get the 2
Okay,
agreements.
so not before then?
Probably
so
on February 10th.
February 8th or 10th or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. Unless something happens in the next Wednesday when we meet and, yeah, so.
Okay,
I just sold the counselors and the public, I hope I don't get in trouble for saying this, but a tentative agreement has to be, negotiating teams say, yes, this is what we want to do. They have to be ratified by both sides. So in order for it to be a tentative agreement, both sides have to ratify it and say, yes, we're moving it forward. That's why I don't think I'm going to have the other one, because I'm not meeting until Wednesday with them. So in order to get them, they would have to take a vote the next day in the morning to let me know to be able to bring it forward on the 27th. That's why I'm saying we're going to have a special meeting on February 8th.
February 8th.
Yes, Tuesday. And that's going to be a quick, probably start at 7 o'clock and be done by 7:30.
and our council meeting is the 10th.
Yes, and we have the council meeting on the 10th, which we will hold the public hearing for the budget. And if there is a planning board meeting, we will meet in the other conference room like we have done in years past.
There shouldn't be.
Are they first and third? Yeah,
Yeah, there's a planning board meeting on the 1st.
All right, so
okay,
the
so
8th
you
might-
should be clear.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions or thoughts or comments?
Move adjourn.
There's a motion to adjourn by Lon Wood, seconded by Barbara. That was you this time.
It was me this time.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? That passes 700. Thank you very much. Good night.